Well, good evening and welcome to the Fort Smith City Board of Directors meeting this August the 20th of the year 2024. As in housekeeping, these meetings are being streamed live for those residents who are not able to attend in person. At this time, I'm going to ask Director Rigo to do the invitation. And will you do the invocation? Pledge of Allegiance, and Director Settler do the pledge. Thank you.
Please join me in a word of prayer. Lord, we come before you tonight humbly, grateful for the opportunity to serve, and we ask that a spirit of wisdom and a spirit of grace descend upon this place. And we're grateful always for the many blessings you shower continuously on our community. Amen.
Thank you very much. This time, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Director Zarigo.
Here.
Good.
Here.
Morton.
Here.
George Katsavas.
Here.
Christina Katsavas.
Here.
Settle.
Here.
Martin.
Here. Okay, thank you very much. This time I'll ask if there's any presentation by a board member of any item that's not already on the agenda.
Mayor, we have the officials form at the end of the meeting, right? Where I might need to say something.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, I'll just wait till then.
Okay, thank you. With that, I will ask for approval of the August 6th, 2024 regular meeting and also the August 16th, 2024 special meeting.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. This time we will go to the first item on the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. There is a presentation. There's no one here, but there's a presentation on behalf of the visitors coming this evening for Torbole and acknowledging our sister city relationship with them. They will be here this week visiting on behalf of the city of Torbole, with whom we twinned last year, and we're very happy to have them here.
Okay, thank you very much.
The first item on this evening's agenda is a resolution approving the purchase of a manufacturing facility at 4811 South Zero Street by 4811 South Zero Street LLC, Ecotech Consumer Products LLC. Many of the people in the audience and who are watching are aware that we had our city attorney contact an auction company who was auctioning out the train facility to inquire who the new owner of 4811 Zero Street was and to remind them of the requirement that the Fort Smith Board of Directors needed to approve the purchase if the new owner was a foreign, non-United States entity. Upon initial review, we, the city and state, were not sure if the new owner, 4811 South Zero Street LLC, with the building operated by Ecotech Consumer Products LLC, was or was not a foreign, non-United States entity. To determine whether the new owner needed the approval of the Board of Directors per the Military Compatibility Overlay District and whether it was in violation of Act 636 of 2023, the Arkansas Attorney General conducted an investigation. The Arkansas Attorney General completed the investigation and determined there is no violation of Act 636. Since there is no violation of Act 636, the approval of the purchase by the Board of Directors is needed to comply with the Fort Smith Military Compatibility Area Overlay District requirement. The resolution provides said approval.
Okay, thank you very much. Madam Clerk, did anyone sign up to speak on this particular item?
None indicating.
Okay, this time we'll entertain the motion to adopt the resolution.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. This time we'll have comments from the board. Director Neil Martin, you're recognized.
So the Attorney General looked at this and determined that this is not a foreign entity purchasing the former train building.
Yes, that's
okay.
what Act 636 does.
Okay, so They did it, do we have results of that investigation?
Just that we know that they're a clear entity.
Okay, so the Attorney General's put that out, that it,
Yes.
they're clear, okay. I thought that our resolution, or when we implemented the military compatibility overlay district, was that we would have the opportunity to approve, or we would approve if it was a foreign entity.
Yes,
Okay.
but this is not a foreign entity.
This is not a foreign
Correct.
entity, so do we even need to do anything?
It's, since that did come out and that it is, I think it would be better for the board to pass a resolution in concurrence with the Attorney General's results of his investigation.
Okay.
Okay. Director Settle?
Is there anybody from Ecotech here at all?
No. The mayor and I will be going up next Monday to visit with Ecotech to see their facility in Fayetteville.
What are they planning to put there? Does anybody
They
know?
plan on doing plastics, injection molding, and employing between 100 and 250 employees.
Is it like small film? Is it going to be like,
They're going to
jugs?
be making jugs, containers, and things of that nature.
They recycle things like car seats.
And when that's what they do, as Director Christina Katsavis, they do recycle, at their Fayetteville facility, they do recycle plastics to make their,
Car seats, things like that.
okay. Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director LaVon Morton?
Well, I certainly say I want to welcome this company to Fort Smith now that we know we're in the clear on the ownership. And, I think it was just an unfortunate situation that seemed to indicate that there was some Chinese ownership, actually. But when it turned out there wasn't. But we want this company to feel welcome in Fort Smith and to engage with the city when they need some assistance from the city on really any matter. Because a company that comes in and employs 100 to 150 people is a significant employer in the city, and I'm confident these will be good jobs. That facility has been empty for many, many years. I don't know how many, but at least 10 years, maybe longer. So it's really great that they're coming here, and they have confidence in the City of Fort Smith workforce.
Thank you. Director Neil Martin?
Yeah, what was it that had everybody thinking that this was a foreign entity? Because I've had people reach out to me, ask questions about what was it? Was there something in their management chain, or I mean, what was it? That
I believe it is a company that is American and Taiwanese owned, and so is listed as a foreign LLC. And so that is something that the Arkansas Attorney General vetted. And since per Act 636, and because that came back clear, this resolution will make sure that the board's intentions are clear, that we're welcoming them to Fort Smith.
Anything else, Director Martin?
That's it for me.
Okay.
Okay, good question. Can they sublease this out?
I keep wondering the question in my head.
If they so choose, yes.
So what would happen in a scenario like that? Let's say they sublease to a foreign entity.
Well, it would go through, if that did happen and it came to our attention, which would be important, primarily would need to go to the attention of the Arkansas Attorney General.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Director Christina Casavage, I'm sorry.
So I did some of my own research on this. So Ecotech is owned by a parent company called Olivet, and it looks like they're based out of California, mostly in recyclings for large things like the car seats and things like that. I know Fayetteville has some space there for them, and it looks like, just from my research, like was said, they're doing that injection molding. So
Yes, they have a 750,000 square foot building in Fayetteville.
yeah.
Any more questions from the board? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Directors Rigo?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Morton?
Yes.
George Katsavas?
Yes.
Christina Katsavas?
Yes.
Settle?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
It's approved, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Item 2,
Thank you, Mayor. The second item on this evening's agenda is an ordinance adopting the City of Fort Smith Purchasing Policies and Procedures Manual. And I'll ask our new purchasing manager, Charity Abbott, to come on up and speak to this. And we're also very happy to have Ali Bassoon also here, although he has since retired on Friday, but to lend his help and support if needed.
Yes,
Charity.
we are glad he is here. Good evening. Presented before you is the revised and updated purchase manual, which was last updated in 2012. With the implementation of the new ERP system, it was necessary to make numerous updates to the manual and procurement process. Additionally, an update was necessary to the travel and purchasing card policies and those are incorporated in the manual. The purpose of the manual is to provide the City of Fort Smith a means of assuring continuity and uniformity in its purchasing policies, provide departments with guidelines to assist them so that they are operating purchasing practices within legal regulations, and to define responsibilities of the purchasing department and operating departments. The updated manual serves as a guidebook to how the city acquires its goods and services of various types. The purpose of it is to educate both our employees and our vendors in how we buy and sell in the City of Fort Smith. The numerous revisions made to the manual, as well as the travel and purchasing card policies, were necessary in order to educate, facilitate, and standardize the purchasing, travel, and city expenditure processes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, is there anyone to speak on this item?
None indicating.
Okay, we will entertain a motion to adopt the ordinance.
Second.
Thank you. This time, any board comments? Director Christine Casavas, and then Director LaVon Martin, and then Director George Casavas.
So, first of all, I would like to say that it's a very thorough policy and mirrors most corporate policies. I had a few questions. So page 11A, where it talks about, airfare must be purchased directly from the airline. I was a little unclear on that because, I know some of the sites, you can shop it around and get a better deal. So it seems like it might lead to, overpaying and wasting taxpayer money.
So the reason for that is a refund issue. So if something happens and they aren't able to make their flight, or they aren't able to go to the conference, we've had issues in getting refunds on that. So my understanding is, of course, as the new purchasing manager, that was the reason for that policy decision.
Okay, and then in the appendix where it talks about local vendors and the 5% threshold on price, we're not defining local, and I feel like sometimes this ambiguous language gets us into trouble.
Right.
Is there a definition for local, and if so, could we amend it to include that?
We can. Local is defined as those businesses residing within Fort Smith.
Okay, so Fort Smith only, not necessally River Valley
Let
or
me make sure with
Sebastian
all of-
County?
Yes.
That's
Is that
correct.
Alan?
That's
Okay.
correct. That's correct, yeah.
Okay. And then also on page 11A, number 2, where it talks about the voucher being property of the city, I'm a little torn on this because I understand, that, but, that voucher is really a compensation for someone's time. So if the city is paying to send someone to a conference, we're paying, for them to get there and back. And, I almost feel like that's where, if someone's stuck in an airport overnight, the airline has to provide food, they have to provide a hotel. We're not out that money. Should we allow our employees who have spent their time, they're not getting paid overtime for it, let them keep that voucher for their personal use? So that, that was something, I know this is in a lot of corporate policy, so that's, something I kind of struggled with because I do view that as a compensation of time. And, I would just like to put that out there and welcome the opinion of the other board members. Thank you.
Thank you. Director LaVon Martin.
Okay, what I'm about to say is not really for charity, it's for all the department heads, okay? All the department heads in the city. Everyone needs to be aware that P cards are inherently a potential problem. There is a tendency in the world at large, I can't say about Fort Smith, that there's a tendency in the world at large not to look at the detail of the P card purchases by your employees. And over and over again, you see in the news that P cards are abused for personal benefits. So I just would urge each department each department head to make sure that all the people that work for them who are in charge of reviewing P-card details know how important it is that they really be looked at, and that every P-card statement be looked at, not just spot checked twice a year, all of them. So that's my comment.
Okay, thank you very much. Director George Casavis?
I'm good, Mayor.
You good? Okay. Director Settle?
Thank you. Charity and Ollie, I appreciate the red line copy that the board got emailed. This is a complete rewrite. This isn't just a couple of lines on it. This is a holistic rewrite. It looks like it's triple the length that it used to be, so it's very detailed, very organized, and it pretty much spells everything out. So I want to thank you and Ollie, appreciate your retirement, but thanks very much for all your time and effort on this. Thank you.
It was all Ollie's work. It was done before I got here, so.
Enjoy retirement, Ollie.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from the board? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Directors Good,
Yes.
Morton,
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Yes.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Settle,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Rigo.
Yes.
It's approved, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay, we'll go to item number 3.
Thank you, Mayor. The third item on this evening's agenda was placed by the Board of Directors at the prior meeting when it was tabled. It is a resolution authorizing execution of lease agreement and agreement concerning aquatics facility at Ben Geren Regional Park between the City of Fort Smith and Sebastian County relative to Parrot Island Waterpark. I've requested that this be tabled to the September 3rd meeting. I've sent last week the current version of the lease to County Judge Steve Holtz, and have not, they're still working on it and have not received comments. So I think that should go parallel with any appropriation ordinance that's considered.
I'll make a motion to table item 3 to the 3rd of September.
I'll second the motion to table, but I have a comment.
I have a comment.
Okay. We'll start with Director Christina Cassavage.
I feel like the math is wrong on this, and I'll start by saying I'm against it. I was against it at 2.1. I'm definitely against it at 4.2. But when you break the math out, I think we're leaving out the $940,000 balance due. It's not specified in the paragraph. When you add that up, you add in the $200,000 for freight, you add in 2 payments of $705,000, so 30% each, and then a design fee at roughly $235,000, and then you add in the additional 40% at $940,000. That gets us to $2,785,000, and then that leaves a balance of 1.4 to do the installation. It would help when we see things like this to have some sort of Excel spreadsheet that breaks them out, because there's a paragraph here that says this brings the total cost before construction and installation to 1.845 or 1,845,000, but really it would bring it to $2,785,000. When you add in that $940,000, that's why I'm wondering if that's left out of the equation. Because we're figuring the 60%, the 230% payments, and I'm not seeing where the balance due 40% is figured.
No, and to start off with, the original, the item on the August 6th agenda was based on the full cost of $4.2 million. To secure the slides are $2.3 million. So 30% of $2.3 million is $705,000, $2.35 million. And then we pay that to secure the slides. Then we pay $200,000 to transport the slides. Upon delivery, we pay another 30%, and that would be $705,000. And based on the total cost of the slides, assume 10% for design, and that's $235,000. Add that all up, bringing the total cost before construction and installation to $1,845,000.
Right,
That's where
what
that
I've
number
got.
comes from. The remainder would come from, would occur when the slides were here and we had the construction cost and the installation cost. And that estimate is the full 4.2 million. But I'm putting it here to say that should the board at some point choose to move forward with this, that it would be a cost of, out of the $2.1 million already appropriated, we would be able to secure the slides and get them here.
So I'm coming to the 1,845,000 too, but then when you add in the balance due 40%, 940,000, that puts you over the 2.1 or the 2.35, that puts you at 2,785.
It does, but that does not need to be paid to secure the slides. So I probably should have said before final payment for the slides as well.
Okay, we can discuss this more when we put it back on the agenda. I'll yield my time.
Thank you. Director Neil Martin.
So just let me make sure I've got it right. It's still 4.2 million.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just didn't think that was allowing enough for installation. It's allowing like 1.4 million for installation, which I don't think is going to be enough. I mean, I'll say I'm against it. I've been against it all along, but I just want to make sure everyone's aware on the numbers.
Okay, thank you. Director LaVon Morton.
Well, I mean, I got the same 2.785 million that Director Christina Katsavas got, so I agree with her math. Now, the one thing I question though is, I can't believe it cost $1,300,000 to install these slides. I mean, that sounds outrageously high to me.
Well, that was the cost that was quoted by the management company who would be handling the project. The total cost is 4.2 million.
Well, I probably would, I don't know where we're going to end up on this, but if we end up going through with it, I would shop around for it.
Just so you understand that the slides that are being purchased have the containment unit for the water underneath the slides. So it's just not installing the slides and the poles. You got to build a concrete basin for the water to be contained underneath the slides to the pump house to the 4-5 slides. So it's not as simple as saying it's just throwing poles in the ground and slides and erect with a crane. You got to build, there's a lot of concrete work, a lot of piping in the ground, electrical.
I now understand. Very good.
Okay.
Okay, I have one more question. We cannot do a lease with the county that's got the word, they will be reasonable with respect to additional land for parking. We cannot do that. You would never sign a business contract between two business entities with each side will be reasonable. That's just not, we can't do that. There's got to be something fairly concrete that they can't change their mind on. Now, I'm not asking for 10 acres. I'm not saying we don't need 10 acres. We need whatever we need for the 500 that we started with. But also, we need to study, and everybody got it this afternoon, before we do anything, so I'm in favor of the tabling, but we need to study those 2019, 22, and 23 financial results, the cost of insurance in 2023, because it basically doubled. And that's what basically did away with, a huge amount of what would have been money left over for continuing maintenance. And we need to understand the capital costs that we paid over that period of time. So we kind of know, because there have been projects where we've approved $240,000 or $500,000 for extra slides, and we had a giant water leak that we had to fix, and we had to put money in. The county did too, and they shared half of that. We also need to know how much deferred maintenance there is on that facility. And, if we were going to go through this tonight and actually consider it beyond tabling, I would ask that question. But we need to know something about deferred maintenance before we sign the lease. And the lease actually is separate from the decision to purchase the slides.
That is correct.
Very, very, very separate issue. So those are just things that we need to know. And we all have the financial information. It's not in actually the most easy to read format, particularly the capital part. But that's all I've got.
I do have, I did ask the county judge if he would agree, based on some of the comments that were made when Director Good and Director Settle and I attended the meeting, if they would allow us to take ownership of the park, and I was told no.
Okay.
Thank you. Director Kevin Settle.
I'm good, Mayor.
Good. Director George Cassavis.
So Carl, you did approach them about them giving us their half?
Yes.
Well, I'm suspicious of this whole deal. Why would the county even vote to approve the slides knowing they don't have the money? Now they say they don't have the money. Why would they even do that? And then they come up with this ploy, so well, we'll just lease your park for $1. Something doesn't add up here. I'm telling you, this doesn't sound right, because I think if we sign a lease with them, we're going to get the short end of the stick. I don't know how y'all feel about it, but I think there's...
We have a current lease that goes through 2032.
32.
Yeah.
And they have to pay half of the maintenance.
That's right.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, if y'all do approve the lease, I'm not going to approve it. I'm not going to approve the 4.2 million, but we need to look at the management company out there. That I think, what percentage do we pay them, Carl? American.
American Resort Management, I believe it's 5%.
5% of gross or net sales?
Gross.
Yeah, no, we've never looked into them, how they're running things out there. Are they being efficient? Are they watching the money?
If you'd like to go out there and visit with them, I'd suggest going out this weekend and walk with them.
I went out there.
Okay.
I went out there when they first opened. They said, George, here's our concession stand. What do you think?
Have you been out there this year?
No.
I think I was surprised because the concession stand is totally different than it was 10 years ago.
Well, I hope so, because that was the biggest disaster I've ever seen.
If you haven't been out there, then I'd suggest going out there and look at how they operate today.
Well, I may do that, but I'm not for the lease. I'm not for the slides. That's just where I stand on
Okay,
this.
thank you. Director Christina Casavas.
So I would say, I, again, came to the same conclusion as Director Morton. The language, which I'm not for approving any of this, but I think it'll probably get approved, I'll be outvoted, but it's the language where it discusses the parking, the section where it says showing a reasonable need, that needs to be deleted. Either the county agrees to pay for parking or they don't. We get into so much trouble with this ambiguous language in contracts, and we've got to be better about being very specific. I'm certainly not in favor of letting the county out of their obligation that they're signed on to what is it, like 2035? 2032. Okay, thank you.
Director Neil Martin.
Well, the way I understand it is the county has not voted on this yet, the lease agreement.
That's correct.
At all. So really, a lease giving us the property is not even a thing until so I'm not willing on moving forward with that. I mean, we're at 4.2 million. I was entertaining at 2.1 if we were going to be coming in partnering together. 4.2. I'm not in for 4.2 when we are we have sole responsibility and maintenance and all those things that come on top of that. So I'm not good. I don't feel good about this in and of itself. So I think I'm out on it.
Okay, and the motion is to table this item, right?
Yes, sir.
Director LaVon Martin.
Well, I had something I was going to say about the county, but it's been in the newspaper, so I won't say anything further. Yes. It has to do with their financial situation and other things, but it's in the news. People should know it. Look it up. Thanks.
Okay. Any other comments? We have a motion and second to table this item. Yes, Madam Clerk.
Directors Morton,
Yes to table.
George Katsavas.
Yes.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes to table.
Settle.
Yes.
Martin.
No to table.
Rigo.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Motion passes 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
Okay, thank you. This time we'll go to item number 4.
Thank you, Mayor. The fourth item on this evening's agenda are items related to Fort Smith Cemeteries Incorporated. Item 4A is an ordinance amending the 2024 operating budget and authorizing the appropriation of funds from the unobligated general fund balance for the maintenance of Forest Park, Roselawn, and Holy Cross cemeteries. And item 4B is an ordinance waiving competitive bidding and authorizing payment for services related to the maintenance of Forest Park, Roselawn, and Holy Cross cemeteries for 2024. And our Director of Neighborhood Services, Sean Gard, will speak to this and answer any questions.
Good evening, Mayor, Administration, and board members. Just to kind of recap what we discussed in the last study session in regards to Roselawn, Holy Cross, Forest Park cemeteries, Neighborhood Services has been actively involved with these cemeteries since 2015. And the reason why we got involved with these cemeteries was due to the fact that complaints that ranged in a wide variety coming into neighborhood services. Some of the complaints range from the roadways were impassable, mainly with Forest Park Cemetery with washed out access roads and deep ruts making it extremely difficult to navigate through the cemetery, down trees and limbs, markers and headstones that were either leaning or had been completely knocked over, extreme overgrowth, trash and debris piled up from leftover decorations from events out at the cemetery, illegal dumping that was going on, and blown grass clippings that was covering up the markers throughout the cemetery. And what really got our attention was not just the complaints, it's where the complaints were originating from. The complaints that were coming into our department was mainly, a lot of it was senior citizens, that their spouse was laid to rest in one of these cemeteries, and the conditions of the roads made it extremely difficult to reach the gravesite by driving or even by walking. Fort Smith's family members or deceased loved ones were very upset over the unkempt conditions of the cemeteries. Out-of-state families who came to Fort Smith to visit loved ones or attend funeral services contacted our office and were appalled by the conditions and the lack of upkeep. Excuse me. Complaints have been filed with the State Department through the Arkansas Insurance Department, which manages cemeteries in perpetual care. Complaints were posted on social media outlets, along with letters to local newspapers that were published. In September 2019, I met with Robert Akers, the Director of Funeral Services Division, after several complaints were filed with the State Department. We toured Roselawn, Holy Cross, and Forest Park cemeteries and agreed that the conditions and the infrastructure of these cemeteries, mainly Forest Park with the roadways, lacked serious upkeep and maintenance. On April 27th of 2020, I met with the previous owner before Fort Smith Cemetery LLC assumed responsibility. And at that time, the three cemeteries were in a serious state of decay, blighted and unmanaged. The owner made it clear he had no funds and would be walking away from it, or would just hand it over to anyone that would assume the responsibility of it. Neighborhood Services in September 2020, we tried to take some initiative to try and get some help. We partnered with Heart of Hospice and was able to secure a lot of helpers, volunteers that came out, and we addressed the three cemeteries to get it cleaned up before the upcoming holiday season. But we knew something had to get done. In June of 2021, Fort Smith Cemeteries, Inc. hit the ground running. They assumed responsibility, took ownership, hit the ground running to turn the proverbial ship around. Under new leadership, improvements started to be made, and the overall appearance of the cemeteries was looking much better. In May of this year, I spoke with Lisa Welch with Fort Smith Cemeteries, Inc., and she provided a positive insight of the work that was going on at the cemeteries. This included hiring of a monument contractor from Ocker Monuments to come and reset headstones that had fallen or leaning, working with civil engineers to make the necessary road improvements for the citizens to safely navigate through the cemeteries, usage of King irrigation for the grounds upkeep, repair of benches throughout the cemetery for patrons to be able to rest when they come to visit their loved ones, and future ideas for improvements, and one was including putting a fence around Forest Park Cemetery. In May of this year, I was made aware that the funds were exhausted for cemetery upkeep. Neighborhood Services at that time initiated our enforcement protocol by documenting, posting, and mailing out notifications to the owners. King irrigation has been maintained in all three cemeteries which consist of 2 mowings and weed eatings per month. Invoices issued by King Irrigation for the upkeep have been paid through the Neighborhood Services Department abatement budget and liens placed on the parcels. I would like to add in closing, though, that since Fort Smith Cemeteries, Inc. has been over the cemeteries, that ongoing chronic complaints that we have been receiving have stopped. Over the past 2 years, since Fort Smith Cemetery LLC has been managing this, I've gotten 0 complaints in the Neighborhood Services. I've got nothing but compliments, positive feedback from not only from Fort Smith residents, but from folks from out of state that have come in to visit their loved ones. So these cemeteries have been turned around, and Lisa with Fort Smith Cemeteries and their crews and King Irrigation, I can't commend them enough for the work that they've been doing.
Okay. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, are there any citizens' comments on this item?
None indicating.
Okay, this time we need a motion to adopt items 4A and 4B.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any board comments?
Just have a quick question there.
Yes, Director George Savage.
Sean, tell me, who owns these cemeteries?
The Fort Smith Cemetery LLC.
The city of Fort Smith?
No, not the city of Fort Smith. It's a privately owned company, a privately owned LLC. It's not the city of Fort Smith.
It's a nonprofit.
Nonprofit organization.
But they can't afford to keep up the cemetery, right?
Well,
I mean, we're spending $85,000 as taxpayers.
I understand
See,
that.
that's what's getting me.
Well,
What-
thank you, Sean. Part of the issue is the period of time from the prior owners to the current board. Fort Smith Cemeteries, there was a person who was actively engaged in working on the cemeteries, and he took out a rather large line of credit. And the cemetery, the Fort Smith Cemeteries LLC in their name, and they are honoring that commitment to pay a local bank back. And so each month, the interest portion is due to that bank, and that's why they had all plans to be able to handle this themselves this year, but they're unable to.
I mean, we shouldn't be on the hook for bad business from them, just because of them, but.
It wasn't bad business from their perception, from the current board.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know, Carl. Okay, go ahead. I'm done, Mayor.
Thank you. Director Neil Martin.
I guess my concern, and I wasn't here last week, and so I listened to it online, and I think you just repeated it here. We've been having these issues for 9 years. And, you know, maybe on the last couple years, things are getting better, but there's still a subsidy from the city. You know, I'd asked today for the amount of money that the city's spent. It was around $100,000 that we spent so far on these three.
Including last year.
Including last year. And that's the only dollars we've ever spent is last year and this year?
That's correct.
Okay. I guess where I'm trying to get at is at what point do we feel like they'll be able to take it over and run it and keep it maintained? Because we do have a history, and you know, we talked about the dignity and how you take care of those that are dead. Right. We talked about that last week, and I'm in agreement. But we do have to have some accountability in these folks. And as far as I know, these are the only three cemeteries that I consistently get communication on about, or have gotten communication on, that are not upkept.
If I can speak freely for just a moment,
Yeah.
Director, when we got involved in this many years ago, and the previous owner that I had several conversations with and meetings with, the cemeteries had gotten to such a state of disrepair and unkeptness that he was walking away from them. He washed his hands of it and didn't want nothing to do with it. And now the city of Fort Smith, we were dealing with the aftermath of somebody not taking responsibility and do what they were supposed to be doing. And we're getting the citizens, the loved ones, the out-of-state that are contacting us, say what can be done. And so we knew something that had to be done, and that was a large abatement action. And at that time, Neighborhood Services abatement budget couldn't accommodate what was done last year. We have been able to do this year, but some of the conversations that we have had with the Fort Smith Cemetery LLC, that the ship is being turned around. They have been able to make, on the note that was taken out, they're starting to be able to cover that payment a whole lot easier. Revenues are starting to come in a little bit better. Several of the board members have donated their own money and their own time. They've bought new equipment for the cemetery. So there's a board in place right now that is actively involved trying to eliminate its dependency or any kind of assistance from the city of Fort Smith. So getting through this year, I hope that once we get through 2024 and we step into 2025, I hope it is a different scenario. They're actively working to try and improve the situation so they do not have to come to the city and ask for assistance.
Well, do we have any guarantees, any stipulations around that they will be able to maintain it next year and there won't be any assistance from the city?
I don't have that information right now, Director, but it is something I can surely reach out to them and see where their current status is and what they will be looking like.
How much are they, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. How much are they bringing in now? I mean, what's the,
I do not have that figure with me, sir.
okay.
Director Good.
Thank you, Mayor. I've visited the cemeteries mentioned. First of all, I want to thank you again, Sean, for your comments. Was here last meeting, study session. Great presentation. I believe it was Ms. Welch that you brought with it when she came last time. So thank you for the great work that you and your staff are doing. But remind the board that just like the same problem we have with renters, we have illegal dumping that happens at these cemeteries. I've seen it. People will dump at the cemetery, whether it's construction or household debris. We have to, whether it's our mess or not, it's our city, and we have to take pride in what we have. And yes, it's run by a different entity, but it's not the first time that we help an entity maintain what we value as curb appeal and addressing blight. And this is what that does. So I have no problem with what we're doing here. I feel as though we need it. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Director Rigo.
Thank you, Mayor. If you believe, as I do, that it's completely, totally unacceptable to ever allow these cemeteries to fall into a state of disrepair like they were again, then the question becomes, what's the most cost-efficient way to do it? And I've got to imagine that the public-private partnership that we're engaged in with King Irrigation via the Fort Smith Cemeteries nonprofit is cheaper and more straightforward than bringing those three properties into our umbrella management and adding them to our maintenance list and the associated costs with that. Is that a fair characterization?
No, that's a fair characterization.
Thank you.
Director Settle.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I re-listened to last night, like Neil, I wasn't here last week, and I hear that there's a state law that prohibits the trust to be touched, and you can only use the interest that's used toward it. I'm going to go with what Neil said here. I'd like to see a plan, bring back to the board by the end of the year, on what those actions they're going to do to resolve. And I hear they're going to buy a mower so they can do the mowing. There's things that they were going to do, which y'all talked about last week. So what are those actions? If it's 85 this year, does it drop to 15 or 20 next year? How do we get this thing to a zero would be great, but how do we keep this dropping this down? The other side of me is, what can we do legally from the person that walked away? Is there anything we can do from a city legally to the person who just walked away with and said, wipe his hands, and was there anything that they left that we could, because that is the ownership of a private party, not the nonprofit that's now formed, but the previous owner. Is there anything we can do or not?
That was when the mayor, me, and several people came together to help reconstitute the Fort Smith Cemetery's nonprofit board. Mayor is an ex officio member and was at one point the only member on the board. There was a local attorney who donated his time pro bono. We met with the bankers, the banker, and had discussions with that banker and the attorney, and they did look into exactly that. And the person had no assets left to speak of. Did
the same person own all three of these?
No. It's always been the nonprofit, but there was this one person who was running the nonprofit and making decisions on its behalf.
Okay. We said last year that we'd be 1 year. I'm okay with doing it one more time, but if without a plan, it'd be hard for me to do it again.
Okay, thank you.
I will reach out to the Fort Smith Cemetery LLC and ask them to put together a proposed plan for the remainder of this year, going into 2025, that we can present back to the board to let you know what action they will be doing, to hopefully not have to walk through this again next year.
Director LaVon Morton, and then Director Andre Good.
Well, I certainly agree with what Director Good said and Director Rigo said. The city cannot stand by and let these cemeteries grow up into enormous weed patches that, just the grass grows so tall it falls over, and then in the spring it's just a giant mess. And I don't like putting this money out either. but we're kind of boxed into a corner. The question I would ask, though, is you mentioned in your introduction, Sean, that they presented to you a plan to do a number of things, including the fence and some other things. Did they get those things done?
The only thing that has not been accomplished so far, Director Morton, was the fencing around Forest Park Cemetery. The hiring of somebody to reset the monuments. As of this date, there's probably been 34 of those markers that have been reset, stood back up, and repaired. The cemeteries, if you get a chance to drive by them, King Irrigation is doing a fantastic job for maintaining them. Like I said, since they've been involved, and the board that's now in place for Fort Smith Cemetery LLC has been very proactive, and like I said, we have not had no complaints in the past 2 years. And from my standpoint, with what I do for the city, that is a welcome relief to not get the complaints coming in, and people are satisfied.
Okay, my final comment is this, that, if I hear there's a note outstanding, we're paying the interest, well, there's no principal obviously being paid on the note. The balance is not going down. I mean, it's just it will go on this way in perpetuity if there's not some kind of a plan to make it better. But we actually have no idea, based on what I know, what kind of financial, at least the board doesn't, financial condition these entities are in. So we have no concept of what other liabilities they have, how much the note balance is, and how much of a deposit they have in the perpetual care fund in Little Rock. Now, they're entitled to the interest on that. They can't spend the principal on that. But there's supposed to be money going into that fund every time there's a new burial.
Yes, 20% of the purchase price goes in. When Lisa was here last week, Lisa Welch, she did mention they are caught up on making all of those payments into the perpetual care fund.
That's
the perpetual care fund for all cemeteries has $785,000, and Representative Crawford in the 2023 session did actually get past a language that allows a cemetery to take out up to 10% of their perpetual care on a specific project like the fence, but there's several hurdles they have to go through, including having the design paid for and everything prepared to go. Then I believe the money can be released.
Okay, I'm going to say this, and it applies really to all outside entities where the city ends up with a financial obligation either through its own action or by accident or negligence, which is what we have here. The city needs more oversight on this organization. We need monthly financials, or at least quarterly financials. We need to understand their financial position. And our finance department, I'm sorry to add more work to our CFO, Andy Richards, but our finance department is well-staffed with the expertise to do this. I would say the same thing about the convention center and the water park. We need to look at these things, and anything else where that really has a hook into us for money. We need to look at these things on a regular basis. And when we see a problem begin to develop, we need to look into it and say, this is not going like we understood that it was supposed to go, and why, and what do we need to do?
We do review the convention center in Parrot Island Waterpark.
Okay, well, that's great, but we never see it here, and so that we end up being asked for money on these things. And if we're going to be asked for money, then we should, not just in the emergency situation, but periodically, maybe in a study session, just present the financials, give an opportunity to look at them, and if we have no questions, that's fine. And I promise you that for my remaining time, I will not ask 100 financial questions, okay? So, Director Good.
Thank you, Mayor. Things happen. Things happen to our individual households, to our businesses, where you get behind. And I can't help but to wonder if COVID might have had something to do with some of the problems that some of the cemeteries are having. Granted, we haven't had to address this issue in this magnitude until recently. And I'm thankful that we had the staff to step up to do that and to even want to do that. But we all realize that things happen. And give you that example again about things just happening and not being prepared. A family came to me, and I went to Ms. Welch. They had an unexpected child die in the family. And they were not ready, they were not prepared. But Roselawn made a way for them to have a respectable plot and a place to bury their loved one and to go visit them. And from what I'm told, they still go visit the staff there at Roselawn, not just their loved one.
That's nice.
And to even think, I'm sure if you guys don't have loved ones, people in the audience and on the board have loved ones at any of these cemeteries, probably will. If it's not us, we will probably at some point, and we'll want to have that respect for that area maintained, whether the cemetery could pay for it or not. At that time, I guarantee you will not want to, you wouldn't care where the money came from. My loved one is there, and we want them to be respected. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you, Director Christina Casavas.
So do we have the financials on the note balance?
The outstanding principal balance is $600,000.
Okay. There's an ancient Greek saying that talks about how you care for your dead says a lot about you as a society. And, agree we need a long-term plan. We need to look into the financials and start digging out from some of this. And we're talking about $85,000, to show respect for the deceased. And, we throw around so freely millions of dollars for recreation or things like that. By the nature of what we do, we're spending taxpayer money. Every dollar we spend that we're here to allocate is taxpayer money. And so this is, something I would feel good about doing this year. I would like to, see the finances and get a plan in place. But, to me, this isn't something I have to think a whole lot about. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Director Neil Martin.
Well, and I don't think I'm advocating just letting it go and nobody maintaining it. But I'm just wanting to make sure that we understand who is maintaining it. Is there anything being held up if we don't pass this tonight?
Well, to be honest with you, if it's not passed tonight and the funding is not given to be able to pay King Irrigation.
We can't pay King.
We can't pay King.
And they've already done part of the work. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Any more questions from the board? Okay. Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Directors George Katsavas.
Are we voting on item 4 collectively, A and B?
A and B.
Yes.
We're going to batch those.
Okay, no.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Settle.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Rigo.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Morton.
Yes.
Motion passes 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
Thank you. We'll go to item number 5.
Thank you, Mayor. The fifth item on this evening's agenda is an ordinance approving The Social Club Incorporated to file an application with the Alcohol Beverage Control Division to obtain private club and retail beer licenses to sell liquor, wine, and beer. And our CFO, Andy Richards, will speak to this and answer any questions.
So item 5, this is a request made by a new business that's filed an application with our planning department for a business license, and they'd also like to apply for an application for a liquor license, a 2 a.m. private club license with the ABC. So part of this process, the board needs to approve their application so they can file that with the ABC. It's a business, doing business as a social club. It's at 5400 Gary Street. And like I said, this is a new business going in there, so.
Okay. Thank you, Andy. Are there any citizens' comments on this, Madam Clerk?
None indicated.
Okay. I think Director Neil Martin did. At this time, we'll go ahead and entertain a motion to adopt the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. This time, we'll entertain comments from the board. Director Settle.
So, let me ask, is the applicant here by chance?
Not that I'm aware of.
I mean, this is the old former athletic club.
It was the old what?
Athletic club.
Okay.
It's the hangout.
The hangout now, it's the athletic club. Okay, I always had some questions for them, but they're right here.
Well, that's Warren Barber, Roberto Restaurants. He's the one doing that.
Yeah, I mean, there's only one in and out of that area.
Yeah.
There's only one road. I mean, I grew up in that neighborhood area. I know where it's at. There's only one road up Cliff Drive, up 58th Street. So, 2 in the morning around houses, and that's what I'm struggling with a little bit. It's the 2 in the morning and it's all around houses. So that's why I wanted to ask some questions about what her purpose was. Was it part of trying to work out and have wine, or I didn't know what the purpose was, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the board? Director LaVon Morton.
Okay, I'm trying to understand where exactly this is. 5400.
That's below the hill then.
It's the athletic club.
What now?
The old Fort Smith Athletic
Yeah,
Club.
Athletic Club.
The Racket Club, the Fort Smith Racket Club,
Down
Fort
the
Smith
hill.
Athletic Club.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
Right next to Interstate.
Yeah, it's right off the highway, across from the airport, I guess.
It's where where Treetops is being built?
Yes.
Right there.
So it's in that area right there?
Yes, it is.
In that residential subdivision?
The former
Yes.
athletic club was there. Yes.
Well, how is it zoned for a social club
Maggie?
that serves alcohol?
Maggie?
Actually, it's going to remain the hangout. This will just be an accessory use, and it's my understanding it's for their members only. So they're going to have like a restaurant inside. They already have
It's not gonna
some
be a bar.
small
All right,
food
all right,
items.
all right.
So this would just be an accessory use to the actual fitness
Okay.
center, health
Yeah.
club.
Okay, very good. That makes a difference. Thank you.
That makes a difference too.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Director Good.
Just a comment. Remember we were talking about the division being constructed there? Is it called Treetop?
Treetops, yes.
Okay, we were discussing the one-way in and one-way out. So there is actually another way out.
There's two.
There's two. There's 2 ways in and 2 ways out. Just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Directors Christina Getsavis,
Yes.
Settle,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Rigo,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Morton.
Yes.
George Getsavis.
Yes.
It's approved, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Go to item 6.
Thank you, Mayor. The 6th item on this evening's agenda is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute Amendment Number 6 with Burns and McDonnell Engineering Company to provide engineering services for additional consent decree modification and utility financial analytical services. And our Director of Water Utilities, Lance McAvoy, will speak to this and answer any questions.
Good evening. The amendment that you have before us actually just continues what is in the current agreement. What we are looking at is finalizing the updating of the collection system hydraulic model and updating the capacity remedial measures plan. Capacity remedial measures plan is something that we have to do on every 5 years and have that, and that allows us to determine where are the capacity projects that we either have to do or which ones did we think we had to do that we don't. Our model that we had done back in 2015-16 had several issues with it. We're having it redone to correct those so that we have a better model. And in addition to that, the software that we used for that, which was originally XP Swain, and then we ended up going with Info Swain, those are being phased out. Can't use them anymore. So Burns & McDonnell is also taking that and putting it into a web-based, more up-to-date software that we can utilize that will actually save us money, because right now we have to have that on a computer and run it in-house. With it being a web-based, it's much more affordable because you're doing it as a SaaS agreement. In addition to that, we are looking at making sure that we have optimized all 4 of our EQ basins to minimize the number of wet weather sanitary sewer overflows. There is some possible work on the financial as we continue our negotiations with DOJ and EPA for a modification, and we're not sure what that will be. We're also running some different things with bonds to see how that would impact what we could do on future bond issues. So with that, I will stand for questions.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from the audience or citizens, Madam Clerk?
None indicating.
Thank you. Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Director Christina Savage, you're recognized.
So Lance, looking at the agenda tonight, we've got, it looks like 4 consent decree items,
Yes, ma'am.
as we often do. And, you know, the sense I get from the DOJ is that we're not doing enough. And every Tuesday we come here for a meeting, and just about every Tuesday we've got a consent decree project we're working on. So my frustration is, where is the disconnect with this communication? We talk with the EPA, it seems like we have good talks, and then the DOJ, it just feels like, they're unwilling to move. Is there some way we can better communicate the work that we're doing? Because, they say we're tired of Fort Smith crying poor. I mean, we are poor. We are poor. We can't, there's not a lot more we can put on the backs of ordinary citizens. I mean, with inflation, gas prices, food, water rate increase, and I think we're doing good work. I think we're doing good work here. But we've got to find a better way to communicate the work we're doing, and I think we are really doing to the best of our ability. I really believe that.
Yes, ma'am.
So I don't know if that's so much a question for you or administration.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Christina Katsavas. The Department of Justice actually monitors and I believe watches each of our board meetings, so they're aware of what is on the agenda. It could be a negotiating position because we do make it clear that we are doing work and we do understand the importance of doing that work, but also, as you said, the importance of honoring the ordinance and the vote of the people when the 2022 sales and use tax was approved by the voters. So we are getting closer. I think there are going to be ups and downs, and I think we'll hear from them to try to strengthen their case, as any negotiator would do. But the more we stay at it, and the more that our attorneys, Jerry Canfield and Paul Calamita, work with them and provide them the correct information, I think the better it will come out.
And we do take this seriously. We take it very seriously. It's on our minds all the time in everything we do. And, certainly, I hope that's communicated, that we take it seriously. But more time is what we need, and I know that's what we're working towards, and I think we'll get there. Certainly they're always negotiating from a position of strength because they're the federal government. But, we have to take people into account because it's ordinary citizens that fund these projects.
Yes, ma'am.
So, okay, I'll yield my time. Thank you.
Director Levon Morton.
Okay, first question. You mentioned that we did a study in 2015-16, this hydraulic study, and that you're supposed to do it every 5 years. So that's 2021. So is this the first one after 15-16?
Yes, and it was
So,
it
are we
was
late?
set out. No, we are not late on this. We are on time. There was a delay in the consent decree to basically this year, and we will be on time with it. And then it's
So
every
we
year.
got something written from
It is actually in
EPA.
the original consent
Okay.
decree with the
All right,
time,
fair
and we are
Okay.
on time for that.
Okay, so, what I would say is we certainly need to move forward as quickly as we can on projects. And what I remember is from some information, some questions I asked you a couple of weeks ago, Lance, that we have, and I'm going from memory here, like $54 million worth of projects in some state of work at this point, some nearing completion, some just started, but a total of $54 million in 2024, most of which relate to the consent decree.
Yes, half of that would be consent
Okay,
decree.
so, and the thing I would remind all the board members is, it's not like there's a lot of money to do this work. We failed the debt covenants in 2023 in our audit, and we will fail again, barring a miracle, in 2024 of just some enormous rush of revenue or just a total stoppage of expenses in some category, and I don't believe it's going to happen. So we'll fail again. Now, because of what we did, this board passed on July the 11th, we will pass in 2025. But that was on water. I mean, the only money that's available for consent decree work is the money in the bond fund, which right now is effectively tied up for some things, and the sales tax money. There is no, I mean, if you look at the financial statements of the split between water and sewer, you'll see there's a little bit of cash flow from sewer, $3 or $4 million, but water is minus $10 million or some number like that. Huge numbers. And so it does not allow us to move on this as quickly as we need to. And I mean, I think that we spent 8 years arguing with the EPA and the Justice Department. And while we had good reason to argue about some things, the flood and the pandemic, ultimately we went to court, and the court said, you're wrong on every point. You're wrong on every point. You're going to have to do what you signed the contract to do in 2015. So that's the scenario we face, and it's not a good one. But again, we have $54 million of contracts underway because this board did give a lot of ARPA money and $10 million of sales tax money and some other money to the utility department, which was a good thing to do. So thank you.
Director Settle.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So Christina probably wasn't here, and maybe Neil. Years ago, when we did the consent decree, I asked for consent decree items to be off the consent agenda, so that's the reason why you have them as separate items. That way, we can see what's going on and have a better visual of it. So that there's the reason why. The voters voted in 2022 to put a 5/8 sales tax to sewer work, so we could freeze their rates. And that's what we told the voters, and we're sticking to it. And negotiations are two folds. If we're willing to negotiate, but the other party is not, it's hard to negotiate when the other party is not. So our citizens did the work. They voted a sales tax to go to sewer work, so they keep the rates low, and that's what they did. It's on the other group to come to the table and negotiate. So thank you.
Director Good.
Thank you, Mayor. Just kind of want to piggyback off what Director Christina Casavit said and Director Settle said. Christina talked about the importance of communication. So it's important that we reiterate what's going on here. So, like Kevin said, these items are before us. Director Casavit just mentioned it. These items are before us frequently, and as they should be, because the work continues. We're getting some work done, and when we're not getting work done, we're still getting work done, addressing why we're not getting work done. So appreciate the information flow. The other thing is that I think it's vital that we remember is why Director Settle just talked about the citizens passing this tax to allow us to address some of these needs. So our citizens are helping us, and so we are in turn waiting and hoping that the EPA, the feds, will help us. But the fact of the matter is, again, with communication, we've been in communication with them. They know our situation. They know our financial situation. They know what our median household income is. Board members have had, we have sat in meetings with administration, the mayor, and DOJ. So we've been a part of those conversations. They are just simply not satisfied with the amount of work that has been done. And again, when we have fines to pay, that we could be using that money towards the work, we're being forced to pay fines. So again, things happen. Not that it's good, but we're gonna address them, and we're gonna have to. But again, I just wanted to say that because the communication has to continue, and there's been good communication. The problem is the lack of help on the DOJ's part on our behalf, and honestly, inflation is killing us. Thank you.
Director George Casavage.
Go ahead, Lance.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Hey, Lance,
Yes, sir.
remember when this first started, when this consent decree started, 2015?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember there was a federal law that said if sewer rates exceeded 165% of median income, that would give us some leverage? Negotiation leverage?
So what that was it wasn't 165, it was 2.5% of median household income.
Yeah.
In the first, I believe, 6 years, we could ask for a reopener, a financial reopener
Right.
that would give us additional time. And Mr. Gefkin and Paul
So what
Calamita-
happened to that?
So we did get additional time. We got 5 additional years. But when you look at how we fell behind due to COVID, how we fell behind slightly due to the flood, the 5 years was not enough, to do that. We need to comply with the Clean Water Act. I am bound by law. I am a licensed wastewater operator in the state, and I have certain legal obligations that I have to follow. Every month, I sign a document that threatens that if I give false information, I can be fined $10,000 and be imprisoned in federal prison. It is a felony, and I take my job very seriously. So to answer your question on the additional 5 years, we showed that in court that we did meet that criteria. And the other part was EPA wanted us to give them how we were going to use those 5 years. What were we going to do?
I remember
How did
that,
we adjust
yeah.
the schedule? If we gave them a schedule that we still could not meet the compliance, it seemed like we were going to be fraudulent in telling them, okay, we're going to do this with the 5 years to be compliant, and we wouldn't have been. We couldn't meet it. It was not obtainable due to the financial
Okay.
status. So the 5 years is still kind of sitting there, but we do need to do more. And if I may, because the question has come up on communication, and this is one point that EPA has talked with us in the state, is how we do our annual report. They want to streamline that to make it easier for them to understand the work we're doing each year. And we're open to that. In fact, we've asked them, can you please show us what you're wanting? And they're working with us to show us that. So to your point, communication, sometimes we communicate so much that it's difficult to read what they're wanting to see. Whereas if they're just wanting to see a couple of quick tables, we can give that to them and show them the great work that we're doing here in Fort Smith.
So has anybody asked, we just paid a $580,000 fine, right? For the weather overflow?
We have received that request and
590,000.
590,000. Has anybody asked them that, to Director Good's point, why pay the fine when we could use it to improve our sewer system? Has anybody talked to the DOJ about that?
Yes, we've done that.
And what do they say? What do they say?
No.
No, just flat no.
Well, that goes back to the first stipulated penalties we received in 2017, that $120,900. And we made a pitch showing that how well that the cleaning of pipes and such worked, that money could be used
Yeah.
to do more work. And we were told no. This is their way to ensure compliance.
Okay, thank you.
And if I may, it's not just Fort Smith on that. This is nationwide. Speaking with Mr. Calamita, and he mentioned one of the cities that he represents besides Fort Smith, and they're paying 3 years worth of penalties to get kind of caught up. I will let you know that I track how many SSOs we have each year, and I went back to 2019, and we are declining in the number of events that we have, which means the work that we're doing is accomplishing the goal of stopping sanitary sewer overflows. But we didn't get here overnight, and we can't get it fixed overnight. So that's why we need the additional time.
So we're stuck, basically. This is gonna go on for years.
Until we meet.
Well, what if we have a
requirement.
change in federal government? Say we have some new people that have different ideas that'll give us some help. Is that a possibility?
Yes, it is, George.
Yeah, there's a potential for it.
For it.
Again,
I just want to see some hope for, people are
I understand.
with the inflation, that people are just at what's in. All right, thank you.
Director Good.
Final comment. Again, I was mentioning communication, and I forgot to mention the wonderful job that staff has been doing, Facebook communication on the City of Fort Smith page about consent decree work. It outlines what basins we're working on. We just completed 10 and 14. It was at a $12 million project. It talks about how many linear feet that we work in and the size of pipes. And the communication is there. So thank you. And we are, again, doing the work.
Director Neil Martin.
Lance, has the work been done for this? Is this the work, what we're approving?
Some of it has, this is to finish up the work.
Okay.
So I try not to, there are a few times where we will approve a change order. I'll let Mr. Defkin know that we need the money because it doesn't match up with the board and stopping work would be more costly. This one is to finalize the work.
Okay.
And here's one thing I will let you know. When I went through and looked at all the amendments with this agreement, you will not see another amendment to this agreement.
It's done.
If we need additional services, it will be a brand-new agreement.
Okay.
I do not like bringing 6 agreements to a engineering contract.
So you've got the modified hydraulic model and capacity?
They are still
Okay.
what's called calibration. So they
Okay.
check it against real-world events.
Okay.
And then they know what software we're going to switch to.
Do you know what's in it? I mean, do you know what it's telling us at this point? Have they revealed that information?
Some of it has been revealed. I will be truthful with you. I have not sat in those meetings. We have one Thursday that I will be sitting through. Been tied up in others, but
the way I understand it, we should have a better idea of a pathway going forward, projects we don't need to do, projects we do need to do.
Yes.
Because of this.
Exactly.
Can you share that with the board when it's complete?
Yes, it will be a public document. It's called the Continuing Capacity Remediation Plan.
I would like a study session to talk through that. Thank you.
Sure.
Director Christina Casavage.
I think we're on track for about a 3-hour meeting, so I'd like to call the question.
Yes. Madam Clerk.
Director Settle,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Rigo,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Morton,
Yes.
George Katsavas,
Yes.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
It's approved, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you. Item number 7. Thank you, Director Casavage. Item 7.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 7 on this evening's agenda is a resolution accepting the bid of and authorizing the mayor to execute a contract with Patriot Utilities LLC for the SSA remedial measures Subbasin S006 and capacity improvements in Subbasin SK01. And this is a consent decree project, and Lance McAvoy, our Water Utilities Director, will speak to this and answer any questions.
So you all will remember the large bundle project that we had at the end of last year that we broke out per EPA recommendation. This was the one contract we received no bids on. This project consists of installing 110 linear feet of 24-inch casing by using horizontal directional drilling, also known as boring, and then installing 110 linear feet of 8-inch diameter pipe within the casing and connecting that with additional 400 linear feet of 8-inch pipe and 180 linear feet of 8-inch pipe by open cut method, along with 2 manholes. We only had one bidder on this project. And we did reach out to 2 other firms to request, why did you not bid? One of them just flat out said, look, we've got more work than we can do. The other said that they really just kind of ran out of time and it wasn't a big enough project for them. We did make multiple attempts to look at putting this into change order with another contract, so adding that into one of the other projects, and really it just was not going anywhere, so we rebid it out. The contract came in at $999,589.50. And I'll stand for questions.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, did anyone sign up to speak on this item?
None indicating.
We need a motion to adopt a resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Comments from the board. Director Lavon Morton.
Okay, what was the engineering estimate on this contract?
About $560,000 to $570,000.
560 to 570,000. So, okay. Well, I guess I'm not surprised. So are you telling me that all of those, all of the individual components of that really large contract that we turned down last year because we thought it was too much money, have now, this is the last piece of that they're all, if we approve this, they'll all be under contract, and work has been proceeding on the other 6 or 7 or 8 pieces of this. That's a fair statement?
Yes, that's very
Okay,
fair.
that's all I got.
Director Settle?
Lance, where are we putting this 24-inch, 8-inch inside of 24-inch pipe? Is it going underneath the road or something?
It's going underneath the railroad.
Railroad?
Yes, off of Zero, the subdivision, I can't remember the name of it, I'm sorry.
Is the
They're
pipe
on-
going to be in the center of the pipe, or is the pipe going to be laying down the bottom of the 24-inch?
We normally have it close to the center,
So it's kind of
suspended a little
suspended?
bit. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Director Christina Casavage?
So what was the cost of breaking this project into pieces versus approving it as a whole?
We spent, and I'd have to go back, I want to say it was another, I really can't remember what our engineering cost was to break it out, and then what the total was. We saw a little bit of a savings. It was about 10% of a savings from what it originally was. The issue is that project would have been completed by December 31 of this year. We had to extend these contracts to December 31 of next year. And when EPA is wanting to see a certain number of linear feet done each year, that really kind of pushes it out.
I will say though, just to push back on that a little bit, when, we put it out for bid, a lot of the feedback we got from contractors was that it really needed to be a 12/31/25 end date. That was a lot of the feedback we got while we weren't getting the competitive bids.
I will tell you that the main contractor that gave that information did not bid on any of these projects,
Right,
even
thank you.
broken out.
Director Levon Martin?
Well, really, I'm sorry. I was just going to really say what Lance said about the savings, because we did calculate the difference between that one really large bid and the total, and it started out being a couple $1 million. Obviously, this will reduce that, but overall we saved $1 million or perhaps more, and you took a project that was impossible to complete by the time that we had asked for, and turned it into something that should be complete on time and hopefully early. But that's what I'm saying. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Directors Martin,
Yes.
Rego,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Morton,
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Yes.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
Settle.
Yes.
It's approved, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Item 8.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 8 on this evening's agenda is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute change order number 2 with Forsgren, Inc. for Basin 12 SSA remedial measures Phase 1. And our Director of Water Utilities, Lance McAvoy, will speak to this and answer any questions.
Thank you. So Basin 12 was a basin that we had actually done some assessment prior to entering into the consent decree. And the way it is written right now is you will have all of the Basin 12 remediated by the end of the consent decree. We broke that into several pieces, and this is Phase 1. If you'll remember right, I believe last week, or not last week, but last meeting, you finalized the project on Phase 3. The change order tonight is kind of twofold. One was to add some additional days due to weather, and to reduce the overall cost of the project. You'll see in our next item, which I believe is item 9, is authorizing final payment. This project was funded partially by bond and the other part by the ARPA funds that the board supplied us to utilize. So Director Morton mentioned, Director Good mentioned Basin 10 and 14 Phase 1 that we have completed. There was about a $13 million project. The board provided the utility $15 million to work on consent decree projects. It wasn't even related. It was specifically said consent decree projects. This project spends the remainder of those ARPA funds. $15 million as of today has been spent of those ARPA plus a little bit more to finish out the projects. The liquidated damages are $31,500. And the entire cost, when we reduce the amount, the liquidated damages and everything, drops this entire contract to $1,933,190.60. This is a very successful project. It did eliminate several potential sanitary sewer overflows and probably some active ones that we currently have. We may not have had a repeat site like we did with Basin 10 and 14 Phase 1, or that we're working on with Basin 10 and 14 Phase 3 by the Kelly Ball Fields. But we did have several lines that the bottom was missing. The line had collapsed. So by doing this work, we have reduced the potential for future stipulated penalties in this basin. And I'll stand for questions.
Thank you. Are there any citizens' comments on this item?
None indicated.
Need a motion to adopt the
So moved.
resolution?
Second.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Directors Rigo,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Morton,
Yes.
George Katsavas, Christina Katsavas,
Yes.
Settle.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
It's approved, 6 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you. At this time, we'll go to item number 9.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Item 9 on this evening's agenda is a resolution accepting the project as complete and authorizing final payment to Forsgren, Inc. for Basin 12 SSA remedial measures, Phase 1.
So to everything I just said, I would say ditto on this because that was the change order to set up the final payment for this item. So if you have any questions, I'll stand for it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any citizens' comments?
None indicated.
Thank you. Motion to adopt?
So move.
Second.
Thank you. Any more board comments? Please call the roll.
Directors Good,
Yes.
Morton,
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Yes.
Christina Katsavas,
Yes.
Settle.
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Rigo.
Yes.
It's approved, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
This time we'll go to the consent agenda. Mr. Gifton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. On this evening's consent agenda, there are 14 items. Item 10A is a resolution authorizing the submission of a grant application to the United States Department of Transportation for funding the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program for Grand Avenue. Item 10B is a resolution authorizing the submission of a grant application to the United States Department of Transportation for funding through the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program for Park and Kincaid Avenue. Item 10C is a resolution authorizing the submission of a grant application to the United States Department of Transportation for funding through the Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Grant Program. Item 10D is a resolution setting a public hearing date on proposed annexation in the area of Highway 271 and Highway 253. Item 10E is an ordinance repealing the Trails and Greenways Master Plan and adopting the Move Fort Smith Active Transportation Master Plan. And at this point, I'd like to tell the Board of Directors that the administration would like to table 10E because there are changes to the Unified Development Ordinance that need to be incorporated due to the repeal of the Trails and Greenways Master Plan. Item 10F is a resolution adopting the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan for the City of Fort Smith. Item 10G is a resolution authorizing the purchase of a tri-axle dump truck for the drainage program of the Streets and Traffic Control Department. Item 10H is a resolution authorizing the city administrator to accept an offer made by property owners for the acquisition of property and easements in connection with the Lake Fort Smith Water Transmission Line Phase 3 project. Item 10I is a resolution approving donation agreement relative to part of Tract A of Riverland Addition to the city of Fort Smith. Item 10J is a resolution authorizing the purchase of trash containers from Waste Quip for the Solid Waste Services Department. Item 10K is a resolution authorizing the execution of a non-residential solid waste collection and disposal permit and agreement with Raggio Roloff LLC. Item 10L is a resolution authorizing the execution of a non-residential solid waste collection and disposal permit and agreement with H&A Junk Removal LLC. Item 10M is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Mark Industries, Inc. for services related to the acceptance and processing of recyclable materials collected by the Solid Waste Services Department. And item 10N is a resolution authorizing the execution of agreement between the City of Fort Smith, Arkansas and MAHG Architecture for architectural services regarding the construction of a precinct and training center for the Fort Smith Police Department. And are there any items that the board wishes to ask questions about?
I would like to pull E and F out for a separate vote, and since we're going to, administration has to table one of them, I'd like to pull both E and F out for a separate vote. I'd like to do that before we do the rest of the consent agenda items, because I think a lot of people here are for those two items.
Does,
Item E is going to be tabled.
Yeah, but we have to have a separate vote anyway, but I know there's a lot of people who want to speak this. I'd like to, but I'd like to have item F as a separate vote also.
Sherry, is that concurrence or a vote of the board?
Just one.
Carl, I have a question. On item E, if people have signed up to speak to it, if we do table it, can they still speak?
That is up to the board of mayor and board of directors.
They're here all
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's fine with me.
That's fine.
Okay.
I know a lot of people.
I'd like to
A
pull
lot
out,
of people's here. And
Yes.
we're gonna,
I'd like to pull out A, B, and C.
Question or poll
Pull?
for a separate vote?
Yes.
I'd like to have questions on M and N.
okay.
And I do have one question on I. You want to do the consent agenda first, or do you want to do the rest of them first?
Let's hear those items first.
So we will be, we'll start with the pulled items. Is that what the board?
I'd like to do E and F first,
Okay.
before we do. Is you okay with it?
Concurrence?
E and F?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what
Okay.
are we voting on to we're pulling them, but we're tabling them?
We're pulling them off the agenda for separate action,
For separate
and the
action.
board and mayor have said they would like to hear comments from the people who have come this evening.
Okay, and then A, B, and C are
We'll
also being pulled for
pull for
separate action,
separate
but we're
vote.
going to hear E and F first?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm caught up.
So item 10E is the ordinance repealing the Trails and Greenways Master Plan and adopting the Move Fort Smith Active Transportation Plan. And item 10F is a resolution adopting the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan for the City of Fort Smith. And I will ask Michael Mings, our mobility coordinator, to come up and speak to this.
Good evening, Mayor McGill, Board of Directors, City Administrators. It's good to be here in front of you this evening. I am proud to bring before you the Move Fort Smith Active Transportation Master Plan. This document has been a labor of love over the past year. We have done extensive public input. We've had many events that we've attended, setting up a booth at farmers markets, at downtown, at Chaffee Crossing. We've set aside time to meet individually with citizens who wanted to talk about the document as well. We've reviewed this document on a monthly basis with the Friends of Recreational Trails, an advocacy group here promoting trails and greenways in the city of Fort Smith. We talked about this last week at our study session. I know a lot of people are here to speak to the items as well. We look forward to hearing from them, but I will stand before the board for any questions at this moment.
I think Director Rigo, Director LaVon Morton?
You have a question?
Not yet, okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Citizen input?
Are you all finished with?
Yeah,
With Michael?
I've got nothing for Mr. Mings right now, but, I'm sure there'll be some
Yeah,
items.
Madam Clerk, would you please cover the protocol for us, please?
Yes, each individual will have 2 minutes. The first being Joe Elskin.
I thought I put mine in last. I wanted to stand in support because safe walkability, safe bikeability improves the attractiveness of our city. And we are competing against, for people and businesses, we're competing against cities that already have all of this in the works and are putting more money into it and have gotten a lot of grant money to do it. So I feel like, and I'm talking with neighborhoods, talking with people in the neighborhood of the railroad trail, the old railroad trail. It needs upgrades, it needs work, and it's a wonderful spot that a lot of people would love to be able to use if it were just a little bit, it was improved. So I just wanted to let you know that I've spoken with a lot of citizens who care a great deal about what our city feels like, the health that outside areas provide, and the attractiveness of the area when it's fixed up. And I really appreciate what the plan is. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Next, we have Christine Booker.
Arkansas Constitution, Article 2, Section 1, all political powers inherent in the people. That means city administrators are provided power by the people and for them. Arkansas Constitution, Article 2, Section 2, all men are created equally free and independent and have certain inherent and inalienable rights, amongst which are those of enjoying and defending life and liberty, of acquiring, possessing, and protecting property and reputation, and of pursuing their own happiness. A lot of the stuff that's been brought in, people are going to have a hard time pursuing their happiness with it's more and more regulation and what you can do, what you can't do. One of these days, oh yeah, it's great we've got trails. You can't drive a car anymore. You have to have an e-car. You have to have an e-bike. To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the government. And I don't consent. Arkansans are sick and tired of having to take orders, community leaders having to take orders because they get grants and they always have stipulations. You can have our money, it's our money. But you have to do it the way the federal government tells you to do it. And only a few selected people get to decide why it is so they can have their little utopian society. We think you should do it this way. We want smart cities. We want smart refrigerators. We want smart this and that. We've got stop signs with blinking lights on Free Ferry. I'm 55. Those stop signs been there for 40 years at least. When I started driving, those were there. Why do we need blinking lights? Well, we got grants for it. But what else does the government say? Well, okay, you got that money, now here's what you have to do for us. We're tired of that kind of stuff. We don't want it. I don't care if I am not Austin or California. I don't want to be Austin or California. If I did, I'd move to Austin or California.
Okay.
I want to be Arkansas.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let me remind our audience, we've got a new device here. And when the red light comes on, that means 2 minutes or up. And you could get more time with the approval of the board if necessary.
And there's the clock right there.
And there's also a clock, so be mindful of that. Okay, Madam Clerk?
Next, we have Sue Brucker. Is that correct?
I've written mine out to make sure I try to stay within the 2 minutes. So I am Sue Brucker, just a very little background. I'm retired from ArcBest. I've lived in Fort Smith, the River Valley, for 45 years, so I'm deeply invested in our community and I care deeply about what happens to us. I have great concerns about the proposed submission of the federal DOT grant related to Move Fort Smith Active Transportation Master Plan. I actually scanned the whole 210-page document yesterday, and between 2 days, and I won't get into the weeds on the multiple concerns throughout the document, and we'll focus on my one primary concern. Where is the research on the reality of the price we will pay to get the federal funds? Basically what this lady just said. Please know that I am in favor of biking trails and greenways, however, not at the expense of yielding to federal government control and potentially and most likely losing local government control over transportation issues. A case in point, the marketing video created by Andy to basically summarize the master plan refers at one point to cars and trucks being referred to as emotional support vehicles. So at what point does the DOT potentially require me to prove the need to keep my vehicle and use it as my primary transportation mode, or that they determine my car creates a hazard for the active transportation users? Does this sound far-fetched? I don't think so when we've seen the government overreach in recent years of the federal government, and even sometimes on a state level. The plan also talks about connectivity points for what they call rollers, which are those disabled in wheelchairs. Realistically, though, how many of them will be able to wheel their way to critical destination points such as doctor's appointments? And the master plan already touts that we have an excellent public transportation system. So the bottom line is I'm in favor of biking, hiking, trails, and greenways, but I believe with community determination and collaboration, the vision of expanding these areas can be done in increments without opening up ourselves to federal government control, especially with something as critical as our transportation system.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have Jesse Watson.
Hi, actual roller here, just in case y'all didn't notice. My name's Jessie. I've lived in this city since I graduated high school, and part of my story is I'm here to support Move Fort Smith, by the way. But part of my story is I've had 3 college degrees now for almost 10 years, some of them over 10 years. And the reason I'm told over and over again at every job interview that I've been to is because of mobility. They don't consider the bus to be like a mode of transportation that's reliable. So in my community, I live at Nelson Hall Homes. There's a ton of people disabled. This town, almost a quarter of us are disabled, in case y'all didn't know that. And that's way, way over the national average. And I just feel like we really need some plans that are geared towards disabled people here in town.
Okay.
So that's all I really wanted to say.
Thank you for being here. Madam Clerk.
Next, we have Weston Jones.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Weston Jones. I've lived here all my life, grown up here. I work for Grand Avenue Baptist Church, and I'm a steering committee member for this plan. I actually lived in Roland for the first part of my life, lived on the highway, and there was nowhere to really ride my bike. Once we moved to Fort Smith, we moved to Village Harbor, where there's an extensive sidewalk and path network. And there I discovered freedom on my bicycle, even though you're not supposed to ride on the sidewalk. Using these paths, I made friends. I met my best friends through high school. All my friends, we all were able to visit local stores and restaurants via these paths, because we had connectivity in Village Harbor to the area around Walmart and where Bicycles of Fort Smith used to be, there in front of what was Circuit City. Like I said, met my best friend through high school, through the paths. It gave me the freedom to get to and from school. My parents worked. They were unable to actually get me to and from school, and we lived so close to the school I couldn't ride a bus. So, paths. Using these paths, I was able to get to a local church and was able to get involved in the church, where I now am an employee and owe my salvation and my career to paths, basically. I'd love to be able to ride my bike to and from work on nice days such as today. However, it's unsafe to cross Rogers Avenue where I would need to. And for me, this is not just for me, it's for my children. My son was able to ride a bike at 3 years old, and I want him to have the ability to ride where he would like in the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And let me, as your mayor, let me take a moment to thank you for recognizing the protocol. There are a lot of people want to speak, and we want to give every citizen an opportunity to say what they'd like to say. When we were in the House of Representatives, before we spoke, they would always ask if you're for or against something. So that may help us. So if you're against it, we know right away where you stand on it, and then you can make your points. Okay, Madam Clerk, if you please.
Next, we have Tina Burris.
Ms. Burris, okay, here she is.
Thank you. I'm against it. To me, it's a controlled urbanization. If you look that up, it's China Alert. The 15-minute city thing is more controlled, where you can't go anywhere. And what about the weather? Am I gonna ride my bicycle or wheel myself down to the store in the snow, the ice, the rain? And who's paying for this? I don't want my rights taken. I don't think anybody else wants it taken either. And why was this not brought to the people for a vote? And what about the people that live in Oklahoma? How are they going to get across the bridge if they can only be in a 15-minute surrounding area? They're going to lose their job because a lot of people work here in Fort Smith. And I'd like to know who come up with this. That's all I got.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Next, we have Kim Ferguson.
Wait, Sherry, if I may, how many more people do we have? Okay, I get it. You're still going through the stack. Could we maybe call out like 2 or 3 at a time and have people lined up?
Approximately, there's about 18 more.
Okay, maybe we could, have people lined up a few at a time, so just for expediency.
Okay, we will have Kim Ferguson, and then behind Kim Ferguson will be Valeria Kiss. Is that correct?
Also, while we're getting that going, just by a show of hands, how many people live here in Fort Smith?
Pretty good.
Right, thank you.
We got 100,000 people here.
Hi, I'm Kim Ferguson. I do not live here in Fort Smith. I live in Crawford County, but I was raised in Fort Smith. My mother-in-law lives in Fort Smith. I love Fort Smith. Anyways, and I had a whole bunch of notes, but there's no way I can get through all that in 2 minutes. So I just wanted to say, first of all, I do appreciate everything you guys do. I know, my goodness gracious, all of this. I read your agenda today, 900 pages. I don't know how you guys do it. This plan, I was gonna bring it. It's this thick. It's kind of like the Pelosi, you have to pass it to see what's in it kind of thing. I mean, literally. But I read that plan twice, and actually 3 times, because I went back to highlight some things. But anyways, this is not a 15-minute city type thing, but it is just steps toward those things. So we just want, there's a lot of federal government control coming down on you guys. And what this does is it takes away your decision-making process, your decision-making ability. The more you take a federal grant, the more strings are attached. Every time you take federal money, it comes with some little string, and then you've got to, do all these regulations. You have to, do this. They have all these attachments that you have to abide by. And I don't think you guys see. I think that most of the time, you just come, yeah, okay, that's good. Oh, that's good, whatever. Because I don't think that you do it on purpose. I just think this is a lot, 900 pages. It's like, oh, okay, that's just about sidewalks. Okay, we're gonna go through that. We're gonna go through this. But you guys have to read it.
Okay.
Fine, I will read it. I will help you.
Okay.
Sorry. But anyways, I wanted to just, someone could not be here tonight. I have 12 seconds, right?
No, I think you're 2 minutes.
Oh, it's going up, it's going the other way.
No, you're already over.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Madam Clerk?
Next week.
My name is Valeria Kish. I'm a naturalized citizen to the United States and 26 years of resident in Fort Smith. And my statement is going to be short, in agreement with Kim. And I'm talking from personal experience. And this project, in my opinion, has all the hallmarks of globalist, communist agendas I witnessed growing up in a communist Hungary. And make no mistake, the ultimate goal to this project is government control of transportation, eliminating of car usage, controlling freedom of movement. And Kim was right about it. This is just all the beginning. Bike trails, walking passes, they sound wonderful until they become a must. And that's what's going to happen, but before you know it all is going to be forced on you, and all together with public transportation. And this is a climate change agenda. The goal is government control. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Next, we have Joey McCutcheon, and then next will be Andy Postrick.
Thank you, Joey McCutcheon against. It's not that this 15-minute city plan, which you're proposing, originated in communist China, or the fact that all the words or many of the words originated from UN documents, international documents, or the fact that it was created by Mr. Gefkin, an unelected bureaucrat, and a group of probably some well-meaning citizens. It's the fact that I've talked to Emporia, Kansas representatives, and they tell me it's about the money. It's about the money that their city is expending. For example, it wasn't in the plan that I saw. It wasn't in this massive plan, but Fort Smith has a matching grant, a matching share of $5 million because you, without the board even knowing about it, Mr. Gefkin applied for a $25 million grant, which you plan to do again. That's $5 million. What are our priorities? It's also about hypocrisy. How many of you rode a bike, walked, or did any or ran to this meeting? I bet none of you have, and I bet none of you ever will. It's about Emporia, Kansas, where they have a comprehensive plan that is being shoved down citizens' throats right now because citizens did not look at the plan. But money's the big thing. Let's talk about Lawrence, Kansas. Lawrence, Kansas, the citizens are being required under some instance to give up their cars. This is reality. They're forcing the city, the feds, because of all the strings, they're forcing the city to eliminate natural gas. Back to Cheyenne, Wyoming, there's lawsuit after lawsuit, and this plan is being rolled back. Emporia, Kansas, it's being rolled back in Emporia, Kansas. One of the big things that the folks I talked to in Emporia said was that there's regulatory takings of private property going on.
Mr. McCutcheon, thank you very much. 2 minutes have expired, and we know that you're against. Thank you, Joy.
If I may note, after Andy, would be Barbara Conradi.
Hi, Andy Postrick, 4.
There's 510 miles of roadway in Fort Smith, 7,000 traffic lights. Those all have a maintenance budget every year. But if you ignore the long-term maintenance budget of all these roadways, they need to be repaved every 20 years. They need to be reconstructed after 50 years. If you take a look and amortize the cost of all of these roads over the course of 50 years, we should be spending somewhere in the neighborhood of like $36 million a year to maintain our roads, which we cannot afford. So we can either we have to reduce cost is where I was going to go with that. And the only way that I can see that you can reduce spending on roadways is to make it easier to drive less. So we are a one-car household, so we are car light. I gave up my car during the pandemic, and it's been illuminating. It's been amazing. I don't have any road rage. I've lost weight. I feel good. And the only thing holding me back from being from riding even more is the fact that there are so many unsafe places for me to cross Rogers Avenue, Midland, Towson. So that's it. If you make it easier to drive less, it will bring cars off the road. It will reduce the long-term maintenance cost of those roads. And by the way, bike lanes are way, way cheaper than roads. And it will reduce things like the necessity to pave over all of this land for extra parking, because I can park right at the gate right in front of this building, which I did ride my bike here. Thank you.
Thank you.
After Barbara, we will have a Brian Smith.
Okay, I want to thank you for letting us speak. I appreciate it. I have lived in Fort Smith all my life. I've been praying for Fort Smith and the River Valley for 38 years. For leaders, and I pray for leaders all this time. Been praying for you guys and gals and other leaders. I love Fort Smith. I've never wanted to live anywhere else. I'm very concerned about our city, nation, and world. If you're familiar with the World Economic Forum in Davos, there are unelected men and women who think they know what's best for the population of the world. They want to set strict standards for us, especially concerning climate change. They want us to reduce our carbon footprint. They want us to switch to gasoline-powered vehicles from gasoline to electric. Never mind, we don't have the grid to support a fourth of the citizens driving electric vehicles. Their plan is to eventually do away with gasoline-powered vehicles. The biggest oil reserve in the world is right here in America. These elite own numerous houses with big carbon footprints. They fly all over the world in their private jets, and they are climate change hypocrites. Do as I say, not as I do. I watched the video, Walk, Bike, and Roll. I agree we need more sidewalks, and I know there's a plan for that. Don't kid yourselves. The federal government has strings attached to these grants. Our city directors and other city leaders need to learn more about the negative aspects for moving forward with these plans. I did not appreciate the remark in the video where the guy is talking this really cool graphic on a study in the U.S. on attitudes on cycling. He said, I can agree, 37% will never give up their emotional support vehicles. I resent that.
Thank you.
After Brian Smith, we'll have Michael Rich.
Good evening. Yeah, I'm against, but I just want to say I've been here in Fort Smith 9 months. Circumstances of life brought me here. I like this town. I think of it as like a throwback. I grew up down in DFW and that cluster and population explosion over the years, but we can do this as a city. You don't need federal funding. You don't. And I will be behind everybody that's for this. I will gladly locally, paying taxes, not, from a federal grant. And I'll gladly, because actually I like exercise as well, but you don't have to do it from a federal grant. You don't, because, you've just gotten used to federal funding, and it stripped us of our sovereignty. So, and of course, it's not just here in Fort Smith or Arkansas, it's everywhere. So anyway, some things don't have to be changed, and you don't, just because society is moving forward, you don't have to just go with the flow and go along with it. I don't know, I like this throwback city up. Kind of like to see it somewhat stay the same. So anyway,
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
After Michael Rich, we will have Carrie Saley.
All right. I want to thank you for tabling this issue. I think you did the right thing for now. And Mr. Mings did a great job on this. I have to admit, at first glance, it looks great. But as I was reading through, I'm expecting to see things about concrete, asphalt, and paint, and I'm seeing words like diversity, inclusion, equity, and I go, what's that got to do with trails? History has taught us that if we look behind the curtain, we'll find the truth. That happened in Oz, that happened we're still happening with JFK, and that we may find that same thing out with this attempted assassination of Mr. Trump. So we need to look behind the curtain and see what's really there, because this looks more like not traffic engineering, but human engineering. Amen. So we want to be careful about that. Now, there's a lady who is, she couldn't be here, but she sent her statement. She says, this is Susan Correa. In the middle of July, a supervisor from the city came to her door and told her she needed to move her cars. They said they were putting a sidewalk in the alley behind her house. She said, I was never contacted about this. She said, let me contact the city. They said, no, you need to move your car in 5 minutes. They also took part of her land by eminent domain with no payment for the land. This is what she's saying. She and her neighbors had no warning. She called the mayor, but he never returned her call. She called the planning commission and other city officials. They blocked off access to her garage for 2 weeks. They cut the water line 3 times, so several times they were out of water. Needless to say, this family and their neighbors don't like what the city is doing. Anyway, thank you for tabling the issue tonight. I think you did the right thing.
Thank you.
After Carrie, we will have Marion, looks like Folden.
Thank you, City Directors, Administrator Gefkin, and Mayor Gill for hearing from we the people tonight. I have lived in Fort Smith since 1984. I knew when I crossed the river bridge into Fort Smith for my first job interview as a medical speech pathologist that this was home for me. I have economically supported Fort Smith with my dollars and taxes since then and continue to do so. I have become very informed of what is happening to cities nationwide who are enticed to take federal grants to build what eventually becomes a federal highway of trails that connect national trails to city trails, giving the federal government control over private property and ultimately giving control to a zoning czar over the city and people's property. We have national trails in our area. So my first question is, do you have in writing the enticing offers given to our city that these federal government salespeople promise if you take the bait and accept the money? What I understand is that these enticements are not even written in contract on paper. Second question, have you read any environmental and economic impact studies on how much money would be added to our city or area? What is the rate of return on these trails? Would they boost the economy in any way, or what economic benefit they would bring in light of the fact that the city is left to maintain them and provide police protection for safety and crime deterrence? Thirdly, do the people know that the federal grant money is used as a gateway to enter your city, pay for the trails, restructure the roads to make more room for bikes and paths? However, the city is left to maintain and police them? In other cities, these trails have become overgrown with grass and weeds. Tent cities grow along them. They become drug highways, and it will be our tax dollars that end up maintaining and policing them. Do we have that kind of money? Do we want a flood of illegal immigrants in our city, which is happening in New York, California, Kansas, Texas, cities all over this nation? This must be stopped right now before we lose local control, lose power over our own government and decision-making, lose our autonomy, open ourselves up to danger and to our children and citizens. Ultimately, we need to be following the law of nature's God. I say no to this federal grant dollars.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here.
After Marion Folden, we will have Lisa Sellers.
Good evening. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me. I just recently moved to Fort Smith 3 years ago. I'm a resident of California, Oregon, and Washington State. I know a little bit about 15-minute cities, and I can tell you this, they don't work. I love riding my bicycle. I ride my bicycle 5 times a week, 10 miles from my home to the Fort Smith Park, but I do it for leisure and exercise, not for a form of transportation. I looked at some statistics about population and also the footprint of Fort Smith. We have about 90,000 people here, 68 square miles. That's 1.32 miles per resident. Portland, Oregon, 635,000. That's 7 times more than Fort Smith. It's got a footprint of 145 square miles, which is 0.228 square miles per resident. Seattle, 750,000 people, 84 square miles footprint. That's 0.112 square miles per resident. Fort Smith is never going to be a 3-minute city. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we have Keely Simpson. I'm sorry, Lisa Sellers, I think was next one.
Sorry, I thought I was after a lady, another lady. Hello, my name is Lisa Sellers, and as a 22-year member of the Sebastian County Quorum Court, I appreciate what you all are doing tonight and the many hours that you sit through and the many meetings you sit through. One of the pages really stuck out to me, and that is page 79, which I emailed each one of you today, since I just saw this plan yesterday and I didn't have time to read 200 plus pages of all of this information. But what really got my attention was I'm looking, and on the email I sent you, I've highlighted the area I'll be talking about. The top area connecting to Riverfront Drive, one of the connections, is a private drive, and it has a brand new road put on it, gravel road. It's been my dream since 1988 to be able to access my home in this manner. I spent well over $20,000 just to do a gravel road because of, like you said, the inflation. And it is showing here on this map. I would have to give 1,000 feet, open my road to all sorts of, we already have trespassings that I deal with practically on a weekly basis. Gunshots, I've made 2 calls this week to the police. Gunshots at night and during the daytime, illegal fishing, illegal hunting, and illegal dumping, both trash and dogs, racing, and I've also had a dead body next to my property. So, where they thought I should have been able to smell it, would have been so close. This is not a meandering way, it's not a lecta, it's not your normal Sutton State drive-through, ride a bike through area. This is still the Wild West of Fort Smith. If my road is opened up, I am petrified at my safety that will be threatened by what will be accessing my property.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you very much.
After Keely Simpson, we'll have Terry Hargrove.
Okay. Good evening, board and city administrators, trying to get all your titles. I'm for the plan. I was actually on our steering committee, and what drew me is, you know, I also work at a church. I'm the missions facilitator for First Presbyterian Church, and we serve quite a lot of people who are poor, and I hate to use that word, or I'm going to use the buzz terms that some people have problems with, vulnerable. You know, that's in the English dictionary. I've used those words before. And they're vulnerable because they have to walk as their form of transportation. We have people all the time that speed, that don't obey red lights, that fly through school zones. People complain about it all the time on Facebook and other forms of social media. So what drew me to this plan was the safetiness of it, but also because I was looking for some type of solution to benefit our city. I've been on so many different transportation committees, surveys, you name it, and we all come to the same result. We don't know what to do. So what I see this plan is doing is creating more opportunities for people who cannot afford a vehicle, people who have to use their bikes as a way to get to work. Just recently, our church has given over 10 free bikes to people in need. We have a partnership with Next Step Homeless Services, and I'm also on their board. And it was a veteran that stays at the Buddy Smith House that did not have a way to work and requested a free bike. There are people who live at Midtown Apartments on the B Street side of our church. They are just a few blocks ahead of us. They come to our First Sunday suppers in wheelchairs. I'd say 80% of them walk. Some of them are driven to us because they're staying in shelters for people experiencing homelessness. So, you know, some of the comments, you know, it's interesting to hear everybody's perspective, but some of the comments, you know, I was a little confused because I see people all the time using their wheelchairs on places like Towson, where it's very dangerous to even use a wheelchair to get back and forth to work. So I don't understand a lot of what I heard because my involvement in this plan was because I care about my community. I care about people who are less fortunate than me. One day, all of us we're gonna all be elderly, and we never know how many of us are gonna have to use a form of transportation besides our feet. We have to consider other people. We're not all drivers. I drive, but that doesn't mean that everybody else is gonna be like me.
Okay, thank you.
So I support our plan.
Okay, thank you very much.
After Terry Hargrove, we will have, looks like, okay. Sorry, somebody signed in twice. Adam Harbottle? Yeah, go ahead, Terry.
Hi, I'm Terry Hargrove. I've been a resident of Fort Smith for about 20 years, and it's exciting to see all the new trails that are already happening. We've seen a lot of growth down at the riverfront. We've seen a lot of growth at Chaffee Crossing. We know that trails are where our city is headed, and to get this grant money is an awesome opportunity. Some of the stipulations are so that we make sure that the grant gets used for what it's used for. Like, that's to help keep us honest. I'm excited to see that we care, again, about the people who are maybe not as privileged to have vehicles. I work in our recovery communities at Harbor House and Gateway. A lot of those people have lost their ability to drive, yet they're still expected to go to their court dates. They still need to get to work. If you've tried our public transit, has a lot of room for improvement. And so these trails will help keep our citizens safe. One of the master plans connected a lot of our elementary schools. How amazing would it be for your kids to get to school safely, and you're not having to sit in the school line with your car running, just sitting there for 30 minutes. So when I think about all the opportunities that these grants bring us, I'm excited to see our city fighting for this federal money. That's our money too. We can use it here. And I hope that you approve these things. Thanks.
Thank you for being here.
Okay,
Hi, my name is-
after Adam, we will have James Glitz.
Hi, my name is Adam, and I am for this project. I live here in Fort Smith with my wife, Star, and my 2 kiddos, Penelope and Olive. And one of our favorite things to do is to load the girls up on our bike. And we like to go visit all of our favorite spots in Fort Smith. Creekmore, ice cream, the bakery district, downtown to the riverfront area. And I'm sure we're quite the sight to see. You know, it's our going on 3-year-old. She's like, go faster, this feels like flying. And then my little daughter, you know, she's just back there with her big helmet, big smile on her face, and we're just cruising. You know, we're just having a good time as a family. And so, but every single time I put them on there, a lot of fear and anxiety comes over me. Because on April 3rd of this year, I was cycling by myself on Wright Hill Road, and I was struck by a vehicle from behind. I was steamrolled, my bike went underneath the car, was destroyed. I went up on the hood, flew into the air, hit the ground. A police officer witnessed it, and he said, it's amazing that you're standing here, and it's amazing that you're alive after watching what just happened. So, I often wonder, why wasn't that driver more attentive? But then I realized, like, our town, there is no culture of mobilization. So people driving, they don't have to, they don't acknowledge us because they don't have to. There is no culture here. And so what I see this plan doing is changing. People will have to adapt. They will have to adapt to the culture that the city is behind. So really, all I really care about is I want to be able to go down, get ice cream with my family, load them on the bike, and us have a good time. And if I can have 10 more seconds, that'd be awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And again, I really appreciate you all honoring the protocol this evening. We've got many to speak, and we want to make sure that they're all heard. Next, Madam Clerk.
James Glitz, and then after James, we will have Sam Hanna.
Hey there, Board. My name is James Giltz, resident of Fort Smith. For the motion in general, I understand it's tabled. I had a lot written down in favor of this motion. You may recall I was at the previous meeting talking about fiscal responsibility of the things that we might be implementing as a board and my concerns about that and being effective with our expenditures and use of money. Some people might prefer walkability and rideability. Some people might not. I'm probably going to be a moderate user of any trails, walking or riding in town. Something I do know, though, is that generally speaking, these are things that are a feature to the town, that bring in families, that bring in workers that want to be active, want to exist in the town. And I think that it's incredibly fiscally responsible to be going for grants for this. Federal grants, per my understanding, and I could be wrong, this could be a kind of grant that I've never dealt with before. You present them a plan of what you want to do, and if they approve you, they give you money to implement what you said you were going to do. If our plan is, hey, let's make this trail on these specifications in this area that people have indicated they liked or research indicates that they like, we would really, really appreciate if you could give us $5 million so that we don't need to put up $5 million of taxpayer money, since we already sent that money in our federal income taxes and we'd like to get that back. If they say yes, we get our money back to do what we said we were going to do. That seems like a very good use of our financial resources and efforts of the people who work in City Hall to get improvements that people in the city of Fort Smith would like. Thank you very much to the Move It Fort Smith team for doing that legwork and the rest of the people in the Fort Smith administration. And thank you for your time.
Thank you for being here.
After Sam Hanna, we will have Sean. I'm sorry? Messick, okay, thank you.
Thank you to the board. I consider this an absolute privilege to sit here in front of the city and in front of you all. My name is Sam Hanna. I grew up here. I left for about 10 years, moved back in 2019. I work for an oil and gas exploration company here in Fort Smith. I serve the public on the Parks Commission. I'm also on the committee that was on the steering committee that wrote this plan. If anything, I think this plan will help our company recruit geologists and engineers. I'm in full support of this plan. Firstly, the idea that this plan has some sort of political motivation is misleading, detracts from the critical work that this plan is designed to accomplish. The mobility plan is about improving our infrastructure, ensuring safer streets, and enhancing the quality of life for all residents. These goals are not ideological, they are practical, and they are necessary. They are necessary because you have an entire new generation of people in your city who think, they act, and they move differently than you did 20 years ago. If you don't accommodate them, they probably aren't going to stick around. Accepting federal grants, it's common practice across the entire nation. It's used to fund projects that local budgets alone cannot support. I know that our budgets cannot support a lot of this. Federal grants offer flexibility to address unique challenges that our city has. Turning away this funding would force us to choose between raising local taxes or letting our infrastructure crumble. Now on transparency. Over the last 12 months, numerous opportunities for input have arisen with this plan. If you look at, I think it's page 2 on the plan, just a survey with over 900 responses, community input sessions, steering committee, 6 focus groups. If we need to discuss more, let's do it tonight. You hired a mobility coordinator. What did you think was going to happen? He wrote a comprehensive mobility plan. Just stand behind him.
Excuse me, I think your 2 minutes is up.
Would you accept that I speak for 30 more seconds?
No,
Well, I'll wrap up.
Mayor, we haven't let anybody else, I'm sorry.
I understand Director Settle.
We haven't let anybody else do it, and I think we should keep everything the same.
I understand.
A wrap-up
Your
statement.
your time is up. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks for honoring the protocol.
It's vital for the city and for my family and everyone's family. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sean Messick. And this is the last speaker for item 10E.
Thank you.
Ms. Clerk, my 92-year-old father's here also. I think it's probably, when you saw a duplication of names, my dad's name's Joe, so he's here to speak also. Thank you.
Did he sign up to speak, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Yes, I thought it was a duplicate.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Directors. My name is Sean Messick. I moved here a year ago. I bought a home here 6 months before that. So I'm new to Fort Smith. I researched Fort Smith and I bought a home, moved my 5 children and my wife across the country. I did this to flee the overstretch of local and federal government, to join a people that cherish liberty and freedom. I've worked in transit for 15 years. I'm very familiar with some of these things that you're doing. I'm very familiar with the RFP process and the grants. I was in grants. There's better ways to do what we need done. There's better grants that you can get for paratransit. There's better grants that you can get for transit improvements. There's specific grants that aren't tied to C40 cities and things like this, where you can improve your roadways, improve safety, beltways, pedestrian walkways. All of this can be achieved and has been achieved across the US. I'm in this field. You don't need that money. There's other money. There's grants that come from DOT that don't have these strings. If you're not aware of that, there's grant education to teach agencies and cities how to write grants that don't have these strings tied to them. So I'm here to speak to the people. All these things you want, the safety, these things for families, they can be achieved. I worked in mobility. They can be achieved.
Okay,
Giving up
thank you
liberty for
thank you very
security
much,
has
sir.
been a warning
Thank you
from
very
our
much.
foundation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Joe McCutcheon.
Got to get my feet back.
Welcome,
There's
Joe.
a clock up there, is there?
Yeah, we got a clock, Joe.
My name's Joe McCutcheon, and I'm here to talk about the word of the day, and that is safety. Now, that word means different things to other people. To Agenda 21, it means greater police presence. It means taking cars off the streets and supplant with walking, bicycles, motorized bicycles, many passenger trains that run on concrete. The real goal of Agenda 21, which is made up of the richest oligarchs in the world, is one world government. And they are entrenched in this country much more than I would like to ever dream could happen to our republic. But it's taking place daily. And I look at this group in front of me, and it appears to be they're entrenched in Agenda 21 more than they'd want to admit. The idea here, I don't know what the trails are for. The ultimate goal is to find the epicenter of a city, and when that is determined, there will be radials being propelled around the circle of center, the center of circle, that will house all the bit traditional activities in the city on these 360-degree radial that is the epicenter of the city. The housing situation will be located on these. Is this already?
Yes, sir, it's already up. But
I'd like to ask two questions. What is the real debt, Carl, of the city of Fort Smith?
The debt that
Say again?
Are you asking for the debt that the city has?
I'm deaf, I don't understand, but anyway, I'd like to know the debt, and I'd like to know the purpose of all these trails.
okay, thank you very much.
I have one other thing here. I've got 10 packets of letters that I wrote in 2016, 15, and 17 that deal with Agenda 21 and how it has come into existence in Fort Smith.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, Madam Clerk, is that it?
Yes, that's all for 10E.
Okay, thank you.
Motion to table item 10.
Okay, thank you, Director Settle.
Second.
We have a motion to table item 10E.
Second.
Second. Madam Clerk.
Can we, do you mind if I ask Michael Means a quick question? Before we?
Go ahead,
Thank you.
Director.
But Michael, I'll make it quick because we're going to table, so we can bring back. My question is when I look through the packet, and I have not read it, I'm going to read it before we meet permanently again next time. I see a cost here. I see on page 398, call the cost, $293 million.
Yes, sir.
In the first 10 years, $140 million at 111 miles, of all totals together with paved pathways, bicycle facility, on-street alleyways, sidewalks.
Sure.
$140 million in the first 10 years, and another $152 million after 10 years. Where do you expect that money to come from?
Well, grants, I think, go a long way for the city of Fort Smith to be able to build this kind of infrastructure. A question was asked earlier about the cost-benefit ratio of the grants and whether the investments that are given from these grants really pay dividends. I think you could look to an area like Northwest Arkansas. Not that we want to be them. We are Fort Smith. We are our own people. But there has been a noticeable boom in Northwest Arkansas that's occurred. Pardon me. Okay.
Get your mic on. There you go.
It's 5 cities versus 1. Walmart does a lot of stuff up there. I don't want to compare it myself.
Okay, let's talk about
there. My real heart of the question is $140 million. If it's all federal matching, how much would the city be on the hook for a federal match? Is it 80-20?
Not a lot of these grants. The legacy loop that we applied for was no match.
Okay,
so that's $25 million.
With no match. But but most of the time it's 80-20, 90-10, what is it?
50-50, yeah,
okay,
it
so
varies.
If you do 80-20, 20% of $140 million is $28 million over 10 years. So that would have to come out of our city coffers to do this. Is there any plan that you have with targeting department heads and finance where that $28 million would come from?
It would have to be up to the people to vote for an allocation, in my mind, for trail, not more taxes, but an allocation.
And the last thing is, I wasn't here last week, and I watched your video. The opening statement you said was, you talked about eventually you'd like to have people that would have the ability to walk everywhere and not have cars or car payments.
That was not my video, sir.
That was what you said last week on television when I watched the video.
Oh, sorry. Say that again?
Last week when you spoke, your opening presentation, you spoke that you'd have eventually have people without car payments so they could walk and to go to housing, churches.
Yeah.
Is that truly is that what this plan entails?
Yes, we have a lot of low-income residents in Fort Smith who could do very well to save money from a car payment. My family and I, we had a car stolen, and we estimate now that we save about $600 a month now that we just have one vehicle. It's expensive to own a car, to maintain a car, to fill it with gas. We all feel the pains of inflation. And in some areas, we have a poverty level of over, I think, 70% in some of our census tracts. A lot of people can stand to benefit from the cost savings that this kind of infrastructure can bring.
Well, I think tabling this gives me time to read it, and so I'm going to read it all, and I'll have questions when we come back from table.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Stella. I think Director Rigo was next in the queue.
Thank you, and thank you for your work, Michael. And I've no questions for you, sir. I have a couple statements, and then I guess some questions that are perhaps rhetorical, but are important. The Move Fort Smith plan exists. This document exists because we voted unanimously on the 17th of January to have the plan, the 17th of January of 2023, to have the plan drafted. We did this because our existing trails and greenway plan had not been updated since 2004. The Safe Fort Smith plan, which people are also interested in, I presume, exists due to a unanimous vote that we took on August the 16th of 2022. We did that to analyze what we could do to better reduce traffic fatalities in the community. These plans, this book, obligates no money, and it provides only a potential path forward. Also, updated and new plans make us eligible to be competitive for wide arrays of private and public sector funding. You know, a few things crossed my mind listening to the thoughts that folks shared. We struggle, as you heard even tonight, to maintain cemeteries, to fix water leaks. Do you think we are even capable of taking your cars? I mean, the federal government is returning portions of our money to communities all across the country, and they're not going to stop. Why shouldn't we be in the running, and why should we instead continue to subsidize the building projects of other communities? And don't you think that if the government was somehow compelling the people of Lawrence, Kansas to get rid of their cars, you'd know about it? You wouldn't be hearing it for the first time at a random board of directors meeting. This would be a top 5 news story in the country. I did. Boy, I'd love to see a credible source for that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Levon Martin.
Okay, my questions are for Chris Hoover and Andy Richards. He's gone. Okay, is Tammy Schaefer still here?
Yes, she is.
Yeah, Tammy, can you come up?
Forgive me for bringing books up here.
So I've got just two or three questions. This will be quick. So, Mr. Hoover, are you aware of any unusual requirements that are in these grants that will give any more control beyond making us do what we say we will do? Are you aware of anything in any of these grants that will go beyond that?
No, sir.
You're not? Okay. And Ms. Schaefer, are you aware that of any grants we receive on an annual basis that are shown in the financial statements of the audited financials of the city of Fort Smith?
Repeat that?
Are you aware of grants that we receive every year that are shown and audited by our independent auditors that show up in the financials of the city of Fort Smith?
Yes.
And have you ever heard of any issues with the government coming in and trying to take over some particular aspect of the city with respect to what the grant money was used for, as long as we complied with the terms of the grant?
No.
And we have, as I understand it, we have an entire department, we're composed of really one person, whose job is to make sure that we do comply with these grants, and that once the money's spent and we have it audited by the outside auditors, and we certify that it's done, and we get a clean opinion from the auditors saying we did what we're supposed to do we ever hear anything from the government about those grants again?
No, we do not.
No, we don't. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Neil Martin.
One of the concerns that I have with some of these grants is, or not, maybe not necessarily grants, but with some of these plans, they're really long. They also include policy changes, various policy, various things that we're going to do. I just like a little more time to look at that and really understand what those things actually are. So when we get it, and I know we've had this mobility plan, or this plan, we had it for a couple weeks, but sometimes you got to kind of look at it and understand what it is, and then look at what are the recommendations around ordinance changes and things like that, which those broad things, sometimes we just need to look at and understand a little bit. I like trails. I want trails, but I want to know what's the specifics around what's the recommendation that we change, because at some point Michael or Maggie might even come to me and said, well, you guys you guys said you were approving this plan, and with that plan comes this zoning change or whatever. I want to make sure that I really understand what those things are, especially with this one, and then the safe streets. I think that's important for us to really understand what's the actual policy recommendation that's happening with these. So that's the thing that I wanted to share.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other comments on item 10E?
I think I need to clarify my motion to say table till the second meeting in October.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I figured I made the mistake after I'd said it. So make a motion to table to the second meeting in October.
Second.
Thank you, Director Settle. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Gifkin?
Need a vote.
Okay, I'm sorry, Madam Clerk, we need a vote.
Directors Morton?
Yes.
George Katsavas?
Yes to table, just to clarify. Yes to table.
Yes. George Katsavas?
Yes.
Christina Katsavas?
Yes.
Settle?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Rigo?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Motion passes 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gifkin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. The second item is 10F, a resolution adopting the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan for the City of Fort Smith, and I'll ask our Streets and Traffic Control Department Head, Matt Meeker, to come up and speak to this.
Good evening.
On February 2nd, 2023, the U.S. Department of Transportation awarded the Streets and Traffic Control Department a Safe Streets and Roads for All grant for the development of a comprehensive safety action plan. The purpose of this plan was to perform a system-wide analysis of the city's transportation network and identify and prioritize safety improvement projects and strategies to reduce the number of traffic accidents and fatalities in the city. Plan development allows the city to be eligible for future grant funding to implement the safety improvements identified in the plan. And let me specify, these are roadway safety improvements for all users. The resulting comprehensive safety action plan, known as the Safe Fort Smith Action Plan, was developed by the engineering firm of Burns and McDonnell and was presented to the Board of Directors at the August 13, 2024 study session. Development of the plan relied heavily on input from citizens obtained through public meetings and online survey, meetings with an advisory committee and stakeholder groups, and intercept surveys. And I also have Stephen Beam here with me tonight from Burns McDonnell to also assist with answering any questions about the plan. With that, I'll turn it over to y'all. So.
Thank you.
Mayor, is there any citizen input?
Well, first we need
Yes.
Madam
Any
Clerk,
comments?
anyone?
Any citizen comment, Madam Clerk, on that item?
Yes, we do have several.
Several? Okay.
First, I will just repeat what Mr. Meeker said. I'm sorry, Stephen Beam is available to answer questions. Okay. And then first we have Kim Ferguson, and each will have 2 minutes.
Okay, you guys were talking about the federal grants, and I understand that you get the federal grants and that it helps the city. But on this safe plan idea, it's just, oh, hold on, I'm on the wrong page. Sorry, I pulled up the wrong. I was gonna read my letter that I had originally. Anyways, we, on the federal grants, the reason, we're not against any of the safe plan thing, but the vision plan also, if you go and look, you go and look at the UN. They have these plans already typed out. They have you go and they just kind of, it's like a cookie cutter little plan, and then they go to each city, and then you guys, just somebody comes and presents it, and then somebody just approves it. So then every city, we don't want to be, Fayetteville. If someone wants Fayetteville, then they can go move to Fayetteville. But Fort Smith, in our community, River Valleys, we are, just, somebody said that we are disabled, a community of disabled people or whatever. But we also have a high number of elderly, so, people want their autonomy. They want to be able to drive their cars. They want to be able, on the safety program, it limits so many things that you can do. And then it goes, if you go and look at the UN, textbooks or whatever all the documents, it all has the same verbiage. If you guys would just understand that most of these things, these plans, are just cookie cutter from it starts at the UN, then it goes into your country, and then it goes into the cities. And it just grows. It's like tentacles.
Okay, thank you very much.
And if you guys would just see that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I have a question.
Yes. Director Rigo, you recognize.
My question, because it relates to Mr. Stephen Beam. Thank you for being here, sir. Thank you for your work. It's a simple, straightforward question. Did you utilize any materials from the United Nations in preparation of the Safe Fort Smith plan?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Next, we have Tina Burris.
Ms. Burris.
Tina Burris.
go ahead to the next person. And if she comes back, we'll let her speak.
Next, we have Joe McCutcheon.
Joey McCutcheon, Fort Smith. It just seems like this city has more money than they know what to do with. We just spent $350,000 on this plan, $70,000 of local money. According to Mr. Morton, who seemed to be the only one to know, we're getting ready to launch into an implementation study grant to the tune of $500,000 with a match of 20%, which I think that's $100,000. And then also, it doesn't take 15 minutes to get on Facebook and ask the citizens, and it doesn't cost $350,000 to ask the citizens what the dangerous intersections are or the dangerous points in Fort Smith, Arkansas. But what did this study conclude? Big surprise, right? Who controls Fort Smith, Arkansas? Well, we know it's the downtown power broker businessmen, right? So they conclude that the most dangerous points in Fort Smith, Arkansas are Garrison Avenue from 2nd Street to 14th Street, and that's where we're going to start spending this money. I think this board needs to answer the question, how much money are we ultimately going to ask the federal government from? I've been involved in safety in Fort Smith my entire adult life. People cause accidents, street signs don't. Accidents are caused by distracted driving. It's not a street sign. They run a street sign because they're on their cell phone because we're distracted by numerous other things. And it's just really insulting to hear you get up here and talk about all these dollars where you're bailing out private people. But the one you didn't mention is where you bailed out for $2 million a private businessman about a month ago because of planes could crash at the end of his property. $2 million. And now we're going to pay $85,000 to a private company for their cemetery when we can't even, until I put it on Facebook, the city-owned Oak Cemetery was dilapidated and had grass up to here. So what are we doing in Fort Smith and where are we getting the money?
Thank you.
Next, we have Michael Rich.
Did I sign off? Did I request this accidentally?
Yes, E and F.
I've said all I need to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Talisha Richardson.
Good night should probably will be what I say right now. Thank you so much, everyone, for your attentiveness with this particular 2 agenda items. I want to speak regarding safety and make it very personal. I am someone that grew up on the north side of Fort Smith. I remember the day when Grand was 2 lanes and there were cruise nights up and down Grand Avenue, and we begged our parents after football games to be able to go down that thoroughfare. After my parents got a divorce, my mom became a single mom, and we lived on this particular side of town. And I worked at the KFC on South 19th, and because she was a single mom working 2 jobs, I actually had to walk home. I was a track star, played basketball, cheerleader, you name it. But we only had 1 vehicle. We didn't look at that as a bad thing. We just had to make changes in how we did life, which meant at midnight when I was getting off work, I had to actually run for safety reasons from KFC on South 19th to a home that my mom rented in front of Darby. I avoided certain areas for my safety as a 17, 18-year-old. I was afraid of my son walking to Darby Middle School because he has to cross 10th, 11th streets. On Grand Avenue, on any given Friday night, I can drive down that street and by chance see a body laying under a white sheet. The safety of our children, the safety of our community resides in your hands, regardless of where the money comes from. So keep that in mind. Red dots on that safety plan are lives that have been lost from the river to Chaffee Crossing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all that's signed in.
Okay, thank you.
No comment.
Director Levon Martin.
Well, I just want to say I served on this particular committee of safety, Safe Fort Smith, and really there was never anything discussed other than where the car crashes are and how we needed to improve the safety. Because if you look at the tables in that report, and I've read every word of this report, there are fatalities in there, way too many. And if we can do something that saves one person, two person, three people from a fatality or a very serious injury, there are more injuries than there are fatalities. But if we can do something on these streets, we're not going to dig up the street. This is all about better signals and more thought about the extremely wide streets we have, like Garrison, for example, which is so wide that if you're not pretty quick, you're at risk there. And Grand is the same way. Grand is a 4-lane street. It's very wide in some places, and it has places where there's a median in between. But this study was about nothing but trying to reduce the number of crashes on the roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Martin. Director Settle, you're recognized.
Thank you. Board, I haven't had much time to spend on this with both of these, and so I'd like to make a motion to table this to the second meeting in September. I'm not going to say I'm for or against it, but I'd like to have more time to look through this, understand it better. I know there's a lot here. We had 900 pages. A lot happened this week with the storm. I just hadn't had a chance to go through all this data with both of them, so I'm going to make a motion to table this to the second meeting in September, which is 1 month away.
Second.
And then I do have some questions for Matt after that.
Well, that was item F, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, I'll table it. We'll table it second.
We need a vote.
And then I have a question for Matt before we table.
Okay, you're recognized. Go ahead.
Matt, appreciate everything here. My question, a couple of questions is, why are state highways considered in this map? I know RDOT's doing a lot of work on Rogers Avenue between the 74th and Waldron Avenue, if I remember right. They're going to reconstruct that. Why are the rest of the state highways considered in this plan?
Well, we have a lot of city streets, for one, that intersect with them. The other thing is we maintain all the traffic signals on all the state highways. And so most of these areas where you're seeing on state highways that are part of the high injury network are high traffic areas where you have traffic signals. And since we're involved with the traffic signals, we feel like we should consider that. The other thing there is that we're concerned as a whole about the safety of the citizens everywhere in the city, not just on city streets, but if we see a problem that's on a state highway too, we want to do something at least to work to try to address that. If it has to be working with RDOT to do that or whatever we've got to do.
Has RDOT gone through this plan yet?
To my knowledge, no, they have not. They are aware of it because I know Burns McDonald's worked with them as far as on the work on Rogers Avenue. So I think there's some crossover there, and they're aware of that. So, but no, they've not specifically been involved in that. No.
So if we do vote to table tonight, I would ask that this gets to RDOT's hands and you'll have a meeting together, because I think RDOT should at least have an idea of what we're proposing to do on their state highways in the city of Fort Smith.
Well, and this isn't necessarily a proposal on their state highways for specific actions, but it's more like identifying the areas as a problem area.
Do you have a cost of all the priority areas? Do you have an estimated cost of those priority areas?
No, because it's still not been determined as far as what to do at those areas. There's been some possibilities looked at, some different ideas, but no, it is not. There's not a cost to that because there's not been a specific design done.
But you can't look at the proposed project countermeasures considerations and come up with an estimated cost on those ideas?
It could be done, yes, but it would, you're asking basically for a conceptual design on each location.
Ballpark. I mean, if the worst case, you can say, I got a $5 million in front of me, or I've got $500 million in front of me. That's what I'm looking for. I mean, not tonight, but time between now and if we do table it to now and a month from now, can we at least get a rough estimate from cost? And the last question I have is, I looked at the presentation, I watched you guys. I don't understand how Park Avenue with 2 bike lanes would be considered trying to reduce accidents on the road. I didn't understand that.
The purpose of the bike lane, part of that is reducing the traveled width, and also for the vehicular traveled width, and also reducing the speed limit. When you reduce lane widths like that, what you're doing is you're causing traffic because of the reduced lane width to reduce speed.
I just heard somebody talk about the car heading while they were biking on a road, so I'm struggling with that one.
But the bike lane's separate from the road, so it's separated from the road by a barrier.
It's separated by a barrier.
Well, not an actual barrier. In this, like for instance, the demonstration project, it would be temporary in nature, looking at, if this is a successful project and the demonstration project, then it goes to a permanent project, or with a more permanent fixture and separation.
Thank you so much, Matt. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Director Neil Martin.
No questions, Mayor.
Director LaVon Martin.
Matt, you are a professional engineer by education.
That's correct.
Okay. And you are the head of the streets and what's the other part?
Streets and Traffic Control Department.
Yeah, Streets and Traffic Control for the entire city of Fort Smith.
Yes.
And you were one of the leaders of the group that put this together.
That is correct.
Okay. And how many years, counting your time in the engineering department, how many years have you worked on the streets of Fort Smith from an engineering capacity?
22.
22. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any further questions? This time we need, Madam Clerk, we need to call the roll.
To clarify, the motion was to table to the September 17th, 2024 regular meeting.
That is correct. E and F.
This is
He's already been tabled.
This is 10F.
We've already done it.
Directors George Katsavas,
Yes.
Christina Katsavas,
Yes.
Kevin Settle,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Rigo,
No.
Good,
No.
Morton.
No.
Motion passes 4 in favor and 3 opposed.
Okay. Thank you. Were there any other items that we had to be pulled?
I had A, B, and
Yes.
C.
Yes, A, B, and C was asked to be pulled by Director
Yeah, I've
Martin.
got M and N both.
Well, those are questions. I mean, you weren't pulling them. So going to item 10A on this evening's agenda, that's a resolution authorizing the submission of a grant application to the United States Department of Transportation for the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program. And I'm going to ask Chris Hoover, our grants manager, to speak to this.
So I think what I'm looking for here is just some information about the grant, some written information about what the grant is, what the stipulations are, those kind of things. Not seeing them, I don't really have anything to go off of. I would like to table this to get that information. So I'd like to make a motion to table these just so I can get that information. And I don't have a specific, I'd like to not do it on these 2 dates that we've already agreed. We could do it for next meeting. Would you be able to get some information associated with that?
For this next Tuesday?
Yeah, for
September 3rd.
first meeting in September?
So I will say that this grant application is actually due next Thursday. And so the purpose of bringing the resolution before the board was to show support for this grant application to this grant program. So
I just don't know what it is.
yes, sir, and I can definitely give you some information. I also have Steve Beam here, if he wants to come up. He's the engineer that's been working on this, and I mean, is there a specific amount? I will say, there are 2 grant applications. One of them is going to be for Grand Avenue, and then the other is going to be for Kincaid and Park Avenue.
What's the cost of Grand Avenue? I'm sorry.
I think Director Neil Martin.
What's the cost? What's the cost of a King
So
King?
for this grant program, it's an 80% federal, 20% local cost share. For Grand Avenue, it is a total of $300,000. So that'd be a $60,000 city match and then a $240,000 federal match. The park in Kincaid Avenue, Steve told me this afternoon, his team finally finalized the numbers. That total project is going to be $1,250,955, with $250,191 being the city match, and then $1,764 being the federal match. So I will say that we did apply for a previous grant application through the Active Transportation Infrastructure Investment Program. We submitted the plan for Grand Avenue to that program. The reason why we're bringing both of these before the board too is when I've been on the webinars with the DOT, a majority of the planning grants that they have come through their applications, they have been approving. So there's a strong chance that we will get approved for this funding.
And what are we doing?
So on Grand Avenue, we're going to be, it's going to be for a planning study. And I'll ask Michael if he has any specific details that you want to know.
Michael Mings?
Yes.
Okay.
So basically, it's just going to provide for plans if we were to go after a demonstration or implementation dollars through the Safe Streets for All program or another grant program. And then on Park and Kincaid, it's going to be a bike lane on part of Park, and then, so it's going to be from North Greenwood over to Albert Pike, and then Albert Pike over to Kincaid, and then Kincaid over to Waldron
Are
Road.
these, you say bike lanes in the areas that you,
Yeah, so it's going to be a partial bike lane. So there's going to be sharrows on it. It's going to be a demonstration. So it's just think of it as like a testing of what could possibly go there. And then if we wanted to go for implementation dollars to make that a permanent solution, we could.
both of these are due on Thursday?
Yes, sir. Now, I will say, we don't have to have, there's nothing in the notice of funding opportunity that requires the board to have an approval.
No, I appreciate you coming to the, I prefer that.
Yes,
I
sir.
prefer you coming, so thank you for that. I don't have any, I mean, it's just authorize the submission of a grant application.
Yes, sir.
And for a project on Grand, a project on Park, and no detail around it. Like
Yes, sir. Yeah, and Director Martin, I will say that, the city, when I was hired, the city had not gone after a lot of grants in the past. And so this is still a process. This is a process of understanding how the city is moving and adapting to grants. Grants are puzzle pieces.
Right.
And you have to be able to fit them together. And so I think for future reference, I will probably, instead of coming a week before, come 2 meetings before. But I will also say too, there are times where the deadline is, you only have a 30-day deadline. And there are some times where we're working with our engineers, for example, where they do not have all the details that y'all may want or need, because there is so many specifics when it comes to these grants.
Yeah.
And so we need to make sure that, we're hitting whether or not it's in an area of persistent poverty or historically disadvantaged. We have to look at crash data. We have to look at transportation equity and see if any of the maps that provide data from the DOT, we are able to analyze that and then input this into these applications.
I mean, I think we got a lot of feedback tonight from folks that are very interested in grant funding and what happens and what it specifically is. So, I mean, I think it's good to see the community input. I need to know, I want to know what these things are if I'm going to sign on and give my approval for them.
Yeah, and I don't want to take your podium, but to provide a little bit more clarity on what the two grants are purpose. So the Grand Avenue grant application would be what FHWA or the USDOT refers to as a supplemental planning grant. So, something kind of like what Maggie, might do, or if you were wanting to look at a roadway corridor and it has a lot of public input component of it to determine what are the right things for Fort Smith to do along Grand Avenue to address the safety issues that have been observed through the Safe Fort Smith plan.
I guess what I saw here is there were shovel-ready projects.
No, so there's two, under the SS4A grant applications, there's two different, or grant program, there's two different types of grants that you can pursue. There's what they call planning and demonstration project grants, and then there's implementation fund grants. So these two would actually be under that planning and demonstration. They would be classified as planning and demonstration grants. So the Grand Avenue would be a supplemental planning grant, and the Park Avenue would be a demonstration grant.
So am I incorrect in that these did not say shovel-ready?
10B mentions it, 10A does not.
10B?
10B mentions shovel-ready,
Is that
10A does not.
To provide for shovel-ready plans.
Yeah, and on the demonstration grant, there are, in that, the reason the value is higher for that grant application is because there are plans that would need to be prepared, but what is being proposed to be implemented, the reason it's considered a demonstration project is because it's just temporary improvements. So we don't change any curb, we don't add any concrete or asphalt, it's all striping and what's considered temporary type improvements, so that and then there is an element built into that too to get public feedback after the fact. So Fort Smith can determine, is this type of solution something that we like to then implement elsewhere, or is it something that the citizens say, no, we don't like it, and you take it off the consideration for future.
I think what I heard is with A, it's a study to kind of figure out what would potentially need to be done.
Correct.
B is we got something, and we're going to apply for a grant to get to do that thing that we've identified.
Yes. B, in the thing we're doing is temporary in nature. It's not a permanent solution. That's why it's called a demonstration project. It's testing an idea that then could be implemented in a permanent fashion later on if the idea achieves the objectives, which is to make the corridor safer, and the community receives it well.
And the testing of an idea, that's A.
No, the testing of an idea is B.
B, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The final outcome of A would be another study that provides specific recommendations and a cost and whatnot for what the study recommends to be done along Grand Avenue.
Okay.
Thank you, Director LeVon Morton.
Okay, I'd like Matt to come back up, if he's still here. Yeah. And Chris, stay, and Mr. Beam, please stay. So, Chris, stay up there. So my question is this. I mean, what we're applying for here is something to figure out the details that we might want to implement if we come up with a plan that the federal government considers appropriate. Is that a fair statement?
It's a fair statement on A. B is a little bit different because it's actually implementing a temporary plan that could be made into permanent improvements.
A demonstration plan,
yeah,
right?
Right.
Okay, so, but the bottom line is, if we do A and B, we go ahead and apply for these things, and we later decide we don't want any grant money because we're not going to do it, we're able to do that. Is that a true statement?
That is a true statement.
So we've got the opportunity to back out of this if we do A and B and we decide the strings are too much.
That's correct.
If we vote yes on A and B and we decide too much government control, we can back out after we learn more about it. Now, and I would say this, that I do, since I was on the committee, I was seeing all this as it was being done. And I saw these traffic studies as we went along. And I think it is fair to allow the directors who have not had a chance to read this entire document to read that. So I would propose that we have a special, since we have this tight deadline, we have a special meeting next Tuesday before the study session, and we make a decision, because that will give everyone a week to read the document. Is that?
You're back on F, right?
Well, I'm back on A and B, really.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's anything. There's no documentation for A and B. Am I?
Well, but Well, if you read the Safe Streets document, the Safe
Oh,
Streets
you're
document,
saying their
you're going
project's
to
in there.
understand a lot more about A and B. Is that a fair statement?
That is a fair statement, yes.
Yes. So you will know what we're trying to do with A and B if you read that
Okay.
Safe Streets document. I'm just saying that if there's a Thursday deadline, then you deserve the opportunity to read it, and then we can vote. If you see something that concerns you, then we can ask the questions. But, Matt, is there anything in this that concerns you? I mean, this is really not a fair question to drop on you, but is there any element of government control, federal government control, or for this matter, state government control in either A or B that would concern you, since particularly one of them is just a study to decide if we want to apply for the real money?
No.
Nothing
No, there is
concerns you?
not.
Okay, fair enough.
And maybe too, we could be provided with the notice of funding opportunity. I mean, I know I've seen it, but to the rest of the board to go through and look at, the requirements. I know some of it requires using American-made products when possible, things like that.
Director Rigo.
I concur with Director Morton.
Chris, when is the application due?
So next Thursday. And I will say, compared to, so I will send out the NOFO, that's the Notice of Funding Opportunity, to Carl, and he will get it to all the board members. But I will say this grant application is also unique in the fact that there are only a maximum of 2 pages. Yeah, 2 pages. 3 for implementation, and then 2 for what we're going after. So there's not a big old plan like we had for some of the other
That's
ones.
good. That's very good. I'm
So
good.
which is easy. Grant writers like that.
Yeah. I like it as well.
Yes.
Board directors like it.
Director Good, and then Director Settle.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a couple of comments. Before we hired Chris, the board believed that we needed a grant writer. We believed in what we knew that grants would be able to do for us. We studied and asked for a grant writer for this particular purpose. We did the same thing. Well, actually, we did do the same thing in the police department, because I remember Director George Savas asking one of the previous police officers, how much in grants did we get? We direct these folks to do what they need to do. They make the presentation to the board. I believe once, if there's a matching money component. Other than that, I think we're really getting in the weeds and asking to know, and I appreciate anyone who wants to know all the information. I really do, go for it. But again, please don't send me all this stuff until it's ready to be voted on, because you guys were directed to do a job. You're trained to do this. You have a lot of the background material that I will probably never even understand. So thank you for what you do. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Do we need a motion to call a special meeting on Tuesday?
Yes.
Okay.
But we have a motion to table that has been seconded that needs to be, no, don't we, Sherry? We have a motion to table?
I do not have
No,
who
I don't
seconded
think
to
so.
table.
No, I think we have Director Neil Martin and,
I withdraw my motion to table.
okay,
Can I ask my quick question?
and Director Settle.
Thank you. Mine be quick for both of you gentlemen. Are both items A and B tied to the item F that we had tonight?
Yes.
Okay. And then, yes, sir.
So item F does not have to be adopted in order for us to pursue those.
Thank you. That was my next question. And then my last 2 questions. Is this the Park Avenue that we just discussed a few minutes ago, the grant on B? Is that the Park Avenue?
Yes.
Okay. Where is the money coming from, these 2 matching grants, if we do go for this? Where's the money come out of? Is it the street department?
Since it's an on-street project, it'll most likely be coming from capital improvement funds.
Okay. Some question. From capital improvement? From stands.
No, the 1% sales
Yeah,
tax
Stance
funds
fund,
through
yeah.
Stan Snodgrass.
So do we want to make a motion to table it till next Tuesday for a special meeting? Both items A and B?
If you like.
Yeah, I'll make a motion I'll make a motion to table it until next Tuesday for a special meeting.
It being A
In
and
order
B?
to allow people to read the actual Safe Streets study in detail so that they'll be aware of what we're talking about.
A and B.
So I make the motion.
A and B.
A and B, Director Morton?
A and B, yes.
Second. Thank you. If there's no discussion, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Sorry, to clarify, the motion is to table, but to also call for a special meeting.
That is correct.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Do I need a separate motion?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think so.
Directors Christina Kitsavis,
Yes.
Settle,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Rigo,
Sure.
Good,
Okay. Yes.
Morton,
Yes.
George Kitsavis.
Yes.
Motion passes 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay, the next item is items, do you want a break?
Yeah. Without objection, let's take about 5-minute break.
Yes. Thank you.
Before we continue the meeting, let me recognize one of our Boy Scouts attended the meeting, bless his heart.
He
chose a really good night
He gets
to
an
come
extra
here.
badge or something for this.
Where is he? Is Samuel Burks here? Where is Samuel?
Is there some rule that he's got to stay for the whole thing?
No, he's really, Samuel, he's with Troop 3, and he is working on his star rank. Samuel, would you come up here for a minute? Come up here. Come up here. I'm going to give him my pen. He deserves it.
There you go.
I thought you were going to make him talk.
Where'd you get that?
Come up here, Samuel. I'm going to give Samuel my mayor's ambassador's pen because he's going to represent Fort Smith very well, and he has the courage to stay at a meeting like this, so we're really proud of him.
They're all not like this, I promise.
No, they're worse.
So what's next? What's next, Carl?
So there are questions on items M and N, and then the vote can be taken for the remainder of the consent
Okay, could the
agenda.
city clerk clarify what's been tabled before we vote?
The table has been. Director Katsavis, items 10A, 10B, and 10E have been tabled. And we've called a special meeting for the start of the August 27th study session.
Okay.
And then the remaining items, and 10F has been tabled as well.
Okay.
So C, D, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N are remaining on the agenda.
Okay.
And Director Morton has a question on M, which is with Mark Industries. Nicole Riley,
With
Director of
C-
Solid Waste.
Sorry, in court.
C is going to remain in. Director Martin has pulled his question.
If I may, before she gets up here, we do have a couple individuals to speak on 10C.
Okay. Who's,
Yeah, Nicole, we'll wait until that, we'll have the people who want to speak on items 10C first.
All right,
okay.
first is Joe Elskin.
Thanks for staying, Joe.
Oh,
You're a
yeah,
real
this
trooper.
is so much fun.
Tell me anything.
Okay, so I wanted to speak last because I wanted to understand what the negatives were about the issue. And I wanted to make sure that everybody understood that, that grants do not allow the government to control you, that their control is to find out if you're doing what you said you were going to do. And that's it. In other words, are you complying? Because that's what we're doing now with the $100,000, and the next $100,000 is we are just showing that we are doing what we said we were going to do with the money they gave us. So, and you know, from 3 years ago, I kept saying the city should apply for grants. We should do this because we need to spend money on sewer. We need to spend money, and we need to have grant money to support the other things that this city needs. We need to make this city a very friendly city for young people. For my grandson, for his grandkids, and that will be a basically trails, it will be outdoor activities, it will be all kinds of money that will support a healthy lifestyle, a really healthy lifestyle. Okay, sorry, thanks.
Thank you, thank you. Madam Clerk.
Next, we have Mitch McDonald.
Mitch is not here. Madam Clerk,
That's all we have.
that's all? Okay.
Okay. Now we'll go Nicole for item 10M.
Okay, my questions are, this vendor, as I read it, is a different vendor than we currently use. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay, and it says it's going to cost about $45,000 a year based on this contract we just signed.
Right, and that's just a guesstimate based on what we're looking at. As you know, the market ebbs and flows, and what
Right.
we pay is per market price. So I've done an average and just said approximately $45,000.
Okay, so if you looked at the previous year, about how much did it cost in the previous year?
Yeah, in previous years, so I believe last year we were at $150,000.
So this is a much better contract than the one we had in the past. Is that a fair statement?
I would say that we have revenue shares in this that are fair and are adjusted per market conditions, yes.
Okay, and we're doing how many years?
We'll have a 1-year agreement with options to extend.
Okay, so you're saving $100,000, right?
Yeah, we'll save about $100,000 a year. And again, that's based on market. The year before, we spent $250,000.
Wow, okay, I have no questions, no further questions. Thank you.
Are there any other questions on 10M? If not, 10N, resolution authorizing an agreement between the City of Fort Smith and MAHG, and Director Chief Danny Baker will answer any questions.
Okay, this architectural services relates to the building that the city purchased on Highway 71 for the precinct and the training center. And I guess I'm interested in approximately how many officers do you plan to have in this precinct, if you have an idea at this point?
So we are going to probably have to do this in phases just because of the expense that it's going to incur. But initially, the plan is to get the training facility up and running, which is the cheaper of the two facilities, and that will allow us to move approximately 10 training personnel out of the county building that we're currently paying rent on. And with the training facility established, there will be an increased police presence there. Obviously, police officers, doing their in-service training and that sort of thing will be coming and going from the property. And then our plan is to start working on the second precinct, and hopefully, we're planning for 100 employees in that facility. So that would be more than half of our current strength. However, when you factor in non-sworn support personnel and that sort of thing, I think we'll get there pretty soon. And of course, our plan is to begin adding the number of police officers to the department in the next few years to serve the city.
Well, so this will basically allow you to add some police officers without creating an enormous strain on the facilities you have currently. Is that a fair statement?
That is a fair statement, and I would like to see, and what I've said from the beginning is this is a second precinct. It's not a substation. So I would essentially like to see the same manpower, same staffing at the 8200 Highway 71 South property as we have at the downtown location. So essentially 2 police departments in the city.
Okay. Well, that's all the questions I have. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
If there are no further questions, Mayor?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this time, we will ask for a motion to adopt all the consent decree items with the exception of those that will table.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any further comments? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Director Settle?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Rigo?
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Morton,
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Yes.
Christina Katsavas.
Yes.
It's approved, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you very much. This time we'll go to the officials forum. We're looking forward to the mayor's prayer breakfast, and keep in mind, this is for all mayors in the region that will be interested in coming to share with us this week. I think our Marshall's baseball team has finished their season, and we're looking forward to have them play next year and maybe get involved in the championship game. With that, Director Neil Martin.
A couple things. Did we make a determination on the towing policy? I didn't get any
No, not yet.
finalization on that.
No, there's been
Okay.
a lot going on, but Chief Baker and I are discussing it.
Okay.
And we'll provide something to
Okay,
the
I want to at least make my point to Chief Baker. I'll do that at some point. Also, something that I get hit on this week is about someone saying, I don't know who, saying that if people were to feed an animal, a stray animal, that they would get fined for doing so. If I remember correctly, we put that in the ordinance so that we wouldn't leave food, or so that citizens would be encouraged not to leave food out for skunks, rodents, those types of things. Not to not feed an animal that may need food.
Well, I agree with that, just for what it's worth. I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
But it did include dogs and cats because people were feeding dogs and cats that were then not spayed and making the pet population worse.
That's not how.
We can't penalize feeding a starving dog. We can't do it.
I think that was what Mr. Dingman, when he explained it on that.
Danny, would you come up here, please?
That's how it was explained to me. But the spirit was, you can feed an animal, just don't leave it out to where other animals can get to it. And that caused a pretty significant uproar in my orbit over the weekend.
Could you speak to that portion of the animal control ordinance, please?
So I have said many times that the ordinance need to be specific about what you're trying to accomplish. And it's difficult for officers and animal wardens at times to understand what the spirit is. That whole issue, whatever was said on social media, the animal warden was doing their job, doing what they had been asked to do. They were informing a citizen of the ordinance and the requirement of the ordinance. There was no enforcement action taken. The warden, the ordinance says what it says, and it as it's written, and I think what caused even more uproar than the initial post on one of the local forums about the incident, which was chock full of misinformation. The post that came out from the police department did not specify the part of the ordinance which says that the feeding of stray cats and dogs is prohibited unless, and I'm not quoting it verbatim, but you can't leave it unattended. In other words, if somebody wants to feed or water a stray, they can do that as long as they're present when they're doing it. They can't put the food out and walk away, which to my understanding is exactly what happened in the incident that sparked all of this. So, again, the warden was doing what they were told to do, enforcing the animal ordinances and educating the public.
So what I know the news media picked it up. Channel 5 did a story on it. It just seemed like it was the city looked heartless. Is what it was made to look like. And I think what you just said is what the ordinance says is if you're there, you can feed a stray animal, but you can't just leave it there.
Correct.
I'm on the same page. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. All right. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Director. Director George Casares.
Yeah, I want to make a motion to hold a study session to revisit this animal ordinance and make it crystal clear so people really understand. You know, it's just human nature for a person, a dog or a cat comes up thirsty, tongue hanging out, to give it water or food. You know.
That's what he said. That's what he said.
But it's
You
not
can do
clear,
that.
the public's not clear exactly what the ordinance says.
I mean,
Well, now Carl said that ordinance was amended to include dogs and cats. Is that right?
It does include dogs and cats, but as Danny said, you just can't put food out and leave them unattended. So if the
I agree with
person-
that.
If the person is looking after them, almost in a fostering capacity, then that's fine.
Why don't we?
So do
Yeah.
a public service campaign and get the
Yes, there you
messaging
go.
out.
Director, yep.
Yeah, and then another issue is the shelter's full again, they can't pick up dogs. What's gonna be the answer to this? It's gone on too long.
I have ideas.
You have, well, let's hear it.
It's 9:36.
Not tonight.
It would cause a stir.
Yeah.
We'll talk, we can talk. We can
So
talk.
to be clear now, a person can give a stray cat and dog water without fear of being cited.
They have to stay with the pet.
They have to stay with the
Right.
pet.
Correct.
That's all.
That's all.
Okay, but what if animal control won't pick it up, the pet's not going anywhere?
That's another issue.
See, this needs to be, we need to really discuss this.
They can continue to feed the animal. They can continue to feed the animal.
Well, they're not gonna stay outside all night with it.
Take up the food when
If they
feeding's
put it
done.
in their yard, or if they do something where they are taking responsibility for it, yeah, that's fine.
I mean, they eat quick. My dogs eat in 2 minutes, and that's with the slow bowl, the maze bowl.
Well, yeah, Carl, do we need to do a press release so the public can? to
Oh,
know?
yeah, I think that would be a very
I think you
good
need to
way.
do that to be crystal clear about this, because people, you know.
That's a good idea. We'll do that.
All right, thank
Director
you.
Anything else? You're good. I'm good. Director LeVon Morton.
Well, I'm going to comment on the animals. You know, I think that any shelter is going to have problems where you have a limited capacity and you have what appears to be an unlimited number of strays. You know, you can do adoptions as many as you can, or you can do transports as many as you can, although as I understand it, those are getting harder. But at the end of that, the shelter has nothing to do but say, well, we're full, because, you know, Hope Humane got in a lot of trouble with city directors over taking, that's the one from 2019 that closed, from taking more animals than they had capacity for, and the city director saying, well, it's in humane conditions.
That's right.
And so we said, we don't want that to happen anymore. So, you know, I think we have the biggest animal shelter as far as the capacity, when you count fosters, of any of the shelters in the 5 large Northwest Arkansas cities. I really think we do. I'd like to see some actual statistics on that, but I think we do.
We have the police department. I asked the police department this week to gather those statistics.
Yeah, I think we have either the largest or one of the largest, so we do the best we can. We just have a lot of stray animals, and as long as we have that, I understand, you know, if you pick it up and it's in the back of the truck, because I've watched them do it before, what do you do with it if you can't take it to the shelter?
Right.
You know, you hope, you know, what you want and what happens in Fort Smith is people, out of the goodness of their heart, will take care of it and give it food and water for a few days until there's capacity in the shelter, and then the police will take it. So I think we do the best we can, and I don't think there's a magic solution that doesn't involve millions upon millions upon millions of dollars, which we do not have to spend on this, I can tell you. We do not have to spend we don't have $4, $5, $6 million to spend on a 500 dog shelter. We don't. So, but that's not my main point is not that. Pardon me, it's late. But my main point is it relates to the consent decree. And just for the people in the audience, you know, the money we have for the consent decree, because of the operating results of our utility department, is basically the sales tax that was passed, thankfully, by the voters in 2022 to avoid a 57% sewer rate increase. And right now we have maybe 25 million in the bank, and if you add up all the money we're going to get for the 8 years, it's going to be maybe $150 million. The estimated consent decree numbers I've heard, just word of mouth, 600 million, 650 million. So we're 500 million short. Just so everybody knows, we're $500 million short at this point in time. So when we talk about spending money, we're spending the sales tax, which is not nearly the amount that the government wants us to spend. I think we're doing the best we can. So, but obviously they think we need to do better. So based on how they act anyway.
Just interject.
So that's all I've got.
Yeah. Mr. Gifkin.
Thank you. Frequently, I go look at the city of Dallas and their public kennel space. I'm sorry, I just wanted to interject something. The city of Dallas kennel space for total dogs, 490, total dogs they have are 490, total kennels are 388, and they're at 134% of capacity. So, city of Dallas, Texas.
Dallas, Texas, okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Dallas, Texas.
Director Good.
Thanks, Mayor. Sorry, Carl.
I'm sorry, Director Good.
Not a problem. First of all, I want to thank the citizens that are still here who sat here through this whole meeting. Thank you guys for showing your concern for your community. I wanted to thank staff too for being here way past hours. I know you're dedicated to your jobs, and those of you still listening, streaming online, thanks for listening. But I really wanted to do this while she was here, and I see that she's left. Jessie, the lady in the wheelchair that called herself the roller. Now I wanted to speak to her directly because I have a niece who has spinal bifida, who's in a wheelchair, but I also am the city director for Ward 2, and I've been advocating for years for a sidewalk between North O and Grand Avenue because I have seen people walking and falling in ditches. Now that we have a sidewalk so people can actually get in their wheelchairs or bikes or little kids to ride their bikes on so they can walk with a parent or older brother or sister, go from the home to the store, 10 blocks, and back safely. You know, these are the projects that we're talking about. You know, but the other thing I wanted to speak to was we listened to her. People clapped for her. Why? Because she's not like everybody else in here. Because we got to listen to her because she's different. Diversity, inclusion, and equity is just that. It gives people that normally don't get to come to the table or be considered and invited and to be part of the process and to be part of the decision making. So it is to be considered and included. So I appreciate her for being here as well.
Thank you for your comments, Director Wood. Director Rigo.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like added to a study session probably within the next month or so, a conversation looking into and analyzing what options might be available to us as it relates to consent decree projects and the local preference parameters when it comes to contracting.
We will be able to do that.
Thank you.
I'll add that to a study session. Thank you.
What do you mean by, I'm just trying to understand what
Would that be part of Paul, our discussion?
Is that next week?
It could, well, next week, Paul Calamita will be here to discuss the
I don't specifically
decree, but
I don't specifically think next week or sometime within the next month or so, because I'm just looking at as challenges remain and will continue when it comes to getting workers to do work. Is there can we have a conversation around are the current local preference percentages that relate to consent decree projects, are they still right-sized for the scope of work that we have to do?
I'll second that. Thank you, Jared.
Thank you. Mr. Gifkin, you're recognized.
I have nothing, Mayor. Oh, I do have something. Sorry. There'll be since in the interest of time, I'll be sending out dates. The Board of Directors want a date for a special study session of the goals of the Utility Advisory Committee. And I'm thinking that first week after the meeting on the 3rd, if there will be availability. So please just consult your calendars and we'll be sending out.
You said it's a special meeting, so it's an off-schedule meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
So we'll send
You know,
out a meeting.
I'll be honest, Carl. I think we can cover this as one item in a regular study session.
All right.
I was the person who came up with this. It's not going to be a long discussion. It's not going to take 2 hours.
Okay.
This is 30 minutes. I promise you, Mayor. I promise you.
I've heard that.
I pledge it. Where's your Bible? I'll pledge on your Bible.
No, take as much time as we need. Okay, at this time, we're going to go into executive session and announce the board will convene, and specifically to make appointments to the Housing Authority Board, the Parks and Rec Commission, and the Port Authority. After we reconvene, we will announce the appointments and also and open the floor for motions and discuss the new Director of Internal Audit.
Mr. Garvin, I sent you a request for information. If you could get that to me, please.
Okay. Again, thanks to all of you online and in the building that have stayed. At this time, I would, on the appointments, I would like to announce the following appointments to the Parks Commission. Chris Rival has agreed to serve again, and Sean Kispet will be appointed after the vote. Port Authority, Philip Doss, and to the Housing Authority, Ms. Beth Presley. Need a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. This time, has no decision made on the internal auditor, and Mr. Gifkin will make appointment to talk about the city prosecutor at the proper time.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, the Board of Directors has requested that the internal auditor position vacancy be reopened, and thank you for the input into the city prosecutor position.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other announcement, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Director Settle. Need a second. Thank you. All in favor? All right. Second?